That's a beautiful thing too. Once the room's over, it carries over.
See the reaction, baby.
It carries over. And then you get the people in the audience who weren't speaking to just blast their thoughts. And then it's just a trickle of like snowball effect. It just keeps blowing.
But at the same time, if those people did hypothetically come up to speak, they better be able to speak.
Well, yeah, that's a good point too.
You know,
it's not, you don't have infinite amount of time to craft a tweet.
Exactly. And the tone of your tweet.
Yeah.
You know how many people type in uppercase and don't even speak in lowercase?
That's true too.
A lot. That's a clip. that was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
What's cooking, everybody? I am joined in the bunker today by my friend Giovanni Gussen, aka the Goose. I've actually never called him that in my life, but we're gonna go with it. Anyway, Giovanni is the international head of business development for a company called MoonShot Guru. And MoonShot Guru is a venture capital studio which helps late-stage startups enter markets like India and other Southeastern Asian hotspots. He gets into that today. He'll explain it. But essentially, he's working with Series B and later companies who are in the tech space and funded for tens of millions of dollars. So suffice it to say, he has quite an interesting perspective on things happening out there in the world. Anyway, the beginning of this conversation, we started off the first 5-10 minutes going through the GameStop Robinhood Reddit saga. We were recording this about 10 days before the episode was going to come out, and we knew that. So we didn't stay on it too long because we knew some things, more information would come out. We didn't want it to be dated. But what it did is it opened up the entire conversation to a whole bunch of different issues that affect us across society that really this guy introduced everything, and we just riffed on it. So this was excellent, in my opinion. I just enjoyed every second of this. And as usual, I literally had to cut it off at the end. I mean, we went downstairs and grabbed takeout, and we should have just brought mics because we had another 4-hour podcast down there. It was one of those. So really, really enjoyed this and really appreciate this guy coming in and doing it, and we will definitely do it again. And one other thing on the conversation. At some point in here, we did talk about entrepreneurship and how you're trying to take dreams and get them off the ground and the good and bad that comes with that. I will say that in doing this podcast, I've been very fortunate to have a chance to bring in a bunch of people so far who are founders or creators or straight up entrepreneurs in whatever it is they do, who understand what it's like to have to get shit done and know that if you don't do it, no one else is gonna. And I don't just say that from my perspective as someone who does this myself for this podcast and is trying to take a dream and get it off the ground, but I say it because I know that we have a lot of listeners out there who either are entrepreneurs and completely understand and appreciate thoughts and perspectives like somebody like Giovanni would have. And also we have listeners out there who have a dream to start something or have an idea and want to go do it and want to do their best to understand what that might entail. And what I'll say is that I don't think you can ever know until you do it. In fact, I'm certain you can never know until you do it and you're on the island and, you know, you're trying to get shit done. But having these time capsule conversations to look back on years from now, not just for me, but for the people I have in here and for listeners who come in and find the show to see what people who later became very successful, like someone like Giovanni is going to be and already is, but I think he's going to do some pretty crazy things, to see what they were thinking at this point in their life and what their struggles were, what their successes were, and what it all meant. I think that is a really invaluable thing that is coming out of this whole Trendifier studio, the bunker here, that I don't want to say I didn't know that was going to happen, but I didn't know that was going to happen. And to me, it's been pretty special. So anyway, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and we are on YouTube. So if you're watching this right now on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, and leave a like and comment if you have a second to do that. Also, to all the people who've been leaving 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, thank you very much. They continue to roll in. The comments are amazing. I really, really appreciate you guys. that is a huge, huge help. So if you haven't had a chance to do that and you can take a minute to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. That said, you know what it is. I'm Julian Dorey, and this is Trendify. Let's go! This is one of the great questions in our culture. Where's the nuance? You're giving opinions and calling them facts. You feel me? Everyone understands this, but few seem to do it. If you don't like the status quo, start asking questions. You're the second guy coughing coming in here in the studio. It's scaring me.
Just a little phlegm, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I got through like 17 guests or something like that, no coughs, and then last week Ivan, the COVID expert, was coming in here.
I saw that.
It's like, God damn it, John.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
You picked a hell of a day to do this.
A lot of shit going on.
Tell people what's going on.
So we got the Robinhood scandal. That thing is just an absolute mess. Basically, there was a hedge fund group that went and had a plan to short a bunch of stocks. And then we got the Reddit warriors, Wall Street Bets. Gotta love them, honestly. I really do love them.
Heroes,
dude. Even just like the snark comments that they're posting in the thread, it's awesome.
Were you on it last night while it was going down?
Kinda. I was popping in and out, but today I was trying to like peep it every 7 minutes.
Every time you go on though now, there's so many people that you hit refresh, and there's like 7,000 new comments.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly. It's hard. It's kind of getting hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
But they had a subreddit going, and they shut that subreddit down.
Wait, what's the story there? I heard something about that, but I wasn't really sure what it was.
I'm not privy on that too much, but they had the main Reddit going, and then there was like I think they had 1 million people in the Reddit. And then they started, because I guess it was hard to keep up with, so they started a subreddit with a bunch of stuff. And then that was the main thing that got taken down, but the main page is still up and running.
Now, are you a big Reddit guy yourself?
No. Honestly, got on it just for that.
There's a lot of people like that, but
Yeah.
the people who are Redditors, it's like, oh yeah, man, I've been in that shit since like 07.
Yeah,
Like they are old school, but it's interesting because even if people aren't really on Twitter, like I had a blank Twitter account for years, they're still on there.
Yeah, facts.
Right? Like they still look, a lot of people, especially in the millennial demographic, they're always on Twitter.
Yeah.
Reddit, it's like, nah, I've never been on there.
No, yeah. And then Reddit's almost like Clubhouse before Clubhouse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because that's actually interesting. Because Clubhouse is this weird, it's almost like they stripped away certain things from platforms. Like they stripped away what Zoom offers, where you have the video as a bug instead of a feature. And they say we're going all audio. And they also went past Twitter by saying, all right, people say all these things from behind a keyboard because no one has to hear them. But even if people can't see them, they see their picture on Clubhouse, and they have to hear their voice.
Yeah, so
and like, if you want to be a hardo on Clubhouse, you can't like drop a 280 character bomb on somebody and say like, well, you know what I think.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. But I do love Clubhouse. I'm not gonna lie. It's amazing what you're able to do just from a connection standpoint. And it's just like, there's a lot of venture capitalists that are doing rooms, and they're holding open pitches. And before Clubhouse, we have to send 1,000 emails to even get a couple responses and even getting an introduction there. So it's just like having the opportunity just in a split second do that. It's amazing.
It's amazing. I definitely want to come back to Clubhouse. I want to stay on our GME warriors and make sure we get this through. So the thing that is really, really interesting to me, because we're recording this about 10 days before I'm going to release the podcast. And so we'll know more when this comes out. But there's a lot of themes here that are not going to change as far as the significance of what we're seeing. And you and I were talking about this down in the kitchen before this, but when you look at the blatant way with which these platforms shut down one side of trading, there's almost no way you could be more obvious about we are colluding to fuck you over than what they all just did.
It's fucking unbelievable.
And what we're talking about, just to be clear, we're talking about when Robinhood, they were the first one, I think, to really do it. And then like TD Ameritrade.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss some companies that, what was the one called?
Fidelity did it.
Yep.
Webull. Webull, which is the one that we were talking about that everyone said we should all go to that one because they're not doing it, and then bang, everyone gets there and they shut it down too.
Right. So they didn't shut down all of it. That's the sketchiest part. They still allowed you to sell, which I guess they have to. So that if you want to unload, they have to. But they wouldn't let you buy. So the intonation here, or whatever the word is that all the Redditors on the Wall Street Bets community who were high buyers of this stock now can't go in and buy it because by and large they are the individual retail investor. They're not major power brokers in the world. So it's not like they just have access to, their own pool to go clear transactions.
Yeah, right. It's funny too because it's almost the stock market's way of censoring, like Twitter does, It's like they found a way to censor companies in a way, and just like mass population getting behind one theme and really pushing it forward.
Yeah. Can you pull that mic in just a little bit?
My bad.
Yeah. No, you're good. That's a whole can of worms, but that's the conversation here.
Yeah.
Because when you really look at this, everyone gets lost in the minutia, and they should. I don't blame them. When they start talking about shorts and calls and puts and options, it's like that's a language of Wall Street.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not even privy to that stuff.
Exactly. Some of the smartest people in the world have no fucking idea what that means.
Yep.
So then you get lost and you're like, all right, I don't want to pay attention. The very simple way of looking at it is that these hedge funds, in this case, I guess Andrew Left at Citron and Gabe Plotkin's Melvin Capital and some others, were all betting against GameStop. So they were legally within the rules of the market doing this thing called a short. We don't need to get into it, where they were betting against the fact that GameStop was going to be able to go up, and that is going to push the price down. And then all the Wall Street Bets guys came in and said, we love GameStop, and they pushed it right back up. And the thing is, the way that they did that, they did it openly and publicly.
Yeah.
They did the same thing that these hedge funds do from the other side, where they just have all these tools to be able to have substantial options and all these crazy collars and all these other terms that no one cares about that the regular person doesn't. And so then the regular person comes in and says, well, we're just going to buy the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
And then they do it. And then it's almost like these hedge funds decided, oh my God, they just beat us at our own game. So hold on, let's get the referees. Referees, you got to change all the rules of this game.
Yep.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, it is fucked up. And it's crazy because there's not any it's not like there was insider trading going on.
No.
Everything that they were talking about is all public information.
Yep.
So I don't understand the lapse there and everything. And then Portnoy put it best. It's like being in a Super Bowl game and, the Packers winning and say you're not a Packers fan, so we're going to add 20 minutes to the clock to change the rules so the Packers have a chance to win.
That's genius.
Mid-game, they just changed the rules.
That's genius. Yeah. That is entirely what they did. So I look at this as like, okay, especially like coming from that world in a previous life, working there, sure. I'm always looking at valuations. I'm looking at the technical side, and much more importantly, I'm talking to people who are really focused on one of those things or in specific areas who know a fuck ton more than I do. But was it offensive to me that GameStop was trading at whatever it was? It got up to like 350 or something like that. Yeah. Sure. Was it wrong though, legally? No.
No, none of it. And the crazy part is they were also sitting on a hell of a ton of cash. What people didn't know, they thought GameStop was on the verge of bankruptcy. They had an absurd amount of cash in their bank.
Yep.
So it's just there's so much misinformation, honestly, going on.
Well, that's the thing. You see that misinformation going back and forth, and these narratives get created. And like, there was even another video. It might have been, it wasn't Portnoy. It's another Barstool guy, but he was recapping the whole situation, and nothing wrong with it. I'd laugh my ass off. It was great. Yeah. But he said right at the front, he was like, and GameStop, the most irrelevant, failing company of all time. And it's like, well, it may look that way from the outside.
From the outside, but behind the scenes, they're doing all right.
Yeah. So you have all these people who now just got fucked. And it happened in the shadiest way that it's not about whether or not it was right for it to go up. Like, you can hold two thoughts at the same time. This is what I want your analysis on. I look at it from these two kind of outcomes. Number one, GameStop was going to come back to Earth. I've seen this movie a million times.
Yeah.
This shit comes back to Earth. People stop their trading action. The bigger the group of people, this is another thing, the bigger the group of people to have to keep in line on an idea, the harder it is to keep them in line.
Absolutely.
So when you have, I think that community was up to like 5 million people in it.
Yeah.
By the time, last time I looked a few hours ago, right? When you have 5 million people who are all mostly smaller fish getting in on this thing, all it takes is a few of those fish, you know, one guy's girlfriend dumps him and he has to go deal with it. Another guy has to go pick up his son from the basketball game. He's got to go deal, well, not in COVID, but he's got to go deal with it, right? And then suddenly he's like, oh yeah, I have that thing. Hold on, I'm sick of it. I got to get rid of it. Then the price moves $5. Then simultaneously, 100 more do it. And the price moves $2. And then boom, it's a race to the down. So that was going to happen at some point.
Definitely. You see it with most stocks.
Right. The other side of it, though, like where you can say two things at the same time, is that the hedge funds, if they were in on it, allegedly, we don't know, the hedge funds basically came in and said, we're going to do it now. And we're going to do it in a way that, to me, by every view of it, looks completely illegal.
I couldn't agree more. It's such a slimy space, dude. That's the crazy thing. It's just like top to bottom, it's slimy. You see what they want you to see from a public perspective, but behind the scenes, they got something totally different going on. Yeah. So it's just, and it's almost like I don't know who's right at sometimes. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, yeah, yeah. You said it yourself. The misinformation.
Yeah, that's the basis of everything almost going on these days.
It's like, who's the source?
Yeah, exactly.
What's their stake in the game?
And then who's to say that they are right? Because I'm sure there's 100 other people that have something else to say that are probably right as well.
Now, you also bring up the censorship thing, though, at the front end of this. And that's brilliant because everything is downstream in culture. Yeah. And can you just explain, so I know exactly where you stand? You were talking about how this is almost like the next iteration, I think you were saying, of, say, the censorship of Trump on his way out of office on Twitter. Can you explain exactly what you mean by that and how it relates?
Well, it's just almost the deplatforming of things, right? You have the Trump situation. So with Trump, they just removed him, and basically, well, one, it's crazy that tech companies even have the power to remove someone like that. Not just someone, the president of the United States.
Yeah. That's
absurd to me. The landscape of what we're seeing just with big tech, it's just like, and I'm coming from the tech space. So it's like, I don't want regulation, but at the end of the day, we're getting to a point that's so crazy that we're silencing the president of the United States. Yeah. We're going to need some sort of regulation in there, because now you're seeing impact Wall Street and the financial market. What's next?
Yeah. And I love that you bring that up, because especially in Corona, where all government from every angle just seems like it is not just useless, but just straight up corrupt and wrong. It is very easy to go to the argument of no government. These people are all evil. And you're not even wrong on the surface. But the thing is, you do have to level with, well, what am I giving up? If I go completely rogue, maybe like Roger Ver, just off the deep end, like, no disrespect, but just like government's all bad, there should be none of them, every man for himself. Well, there's also the protections within capitalism, and that's really, I think, what you're getting at there, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you are looking at a situation where things have gotten too big to fail.
Yes.
And so they also now have power through their reach that's unlimited because it's in the ether. They can get to anyone with a Wi-Fi connection. And they can, therefore, whether they mean to or not, and that's a whole separate conversation, they can control thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're also starting to control almost every industry. Like it's getting to a point where Jack Dorsey, for example, I really do think he means well in his heart with a lot of things he does, but what ends up happening is not what I think he meant for it to happen. And it's just like he bought a shit ton of Bitcoin, right? So then when money starts to, vanish in a way and move to decentralization, he's not going to own money, but he probably will have a large chunk of the circulating Bitcoin. So then he almost does end up owning the money market. And then he also owns the speech market. And then you can get into government too. He shut down Trump. Yeah. And then there's the congressional hearings where they're bringing in, the CEOs and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, nothing has been done.
Nothing.
So it's almost like in a couple months, Dorsey, Zuck, and those guys are going to end up bringing Congress in on a hearing.
That sounds ridiculous, but it's not.
It's not.
It's not. There's also an air of, this is not a word, but there's an air of untouchability been seeing, and see it from Dorsey too, but all these guys, whether it's Sundar Pichai at is that how you say it?
Yeah, Google.
At Google, Bezos, of course, Zuck, definitely. All these big guys, when they come in for these hearings, it's almost like they're, I don't want to make them all look evil, but it's almost like they're smirking at the whole process. Yeah. It just feels that way. I'm sorry. And when I look at their facial expressions, not to read too deep into it, but that's just what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
And so it's like they view it as a dog and pony show. And really what the people up there don't know is that they're the dogs and ponies.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you see the questions these guys ask. Sorry, but half these goddamn congressmen, it's like they never picked up an iPhone.
No, that's the thing. They're so removed from reality to a point. So you kind of need to have a whole tech department within the government to be able to even do these things. Because like you said, they're just so removed from everything. They don't know anything about technology and how it actually works. And it's crazy that they're even having these hearings because they don't know anything. So what's the point? It's just an endless circle.
Yeah.
And then we end up with big tech getting even more and more power because nothing is getting done.
And there's already the gridlock problem in society, in political society as it is.
Yeah.
Now you inject it into tech where things move.
Yeah.
At 6,000 millibits or whatever a minute. I mean, it's fast.
Yeah,
whatever
it's
it is.
I do want to put out there that I'm not speaking about the monopoly side of things because.
What do you mean by that?
I think monopolies are healthy. Like the congressional hearings, they're trying to break up Facebook and stuff like that. I do think monopolies are healthy to an extent. Peter Thiel talks about this a lot. It pushes innovation at the end of the day because if everyone's broken up, what do you have to fight for? You're not taking over a space because it's just that you got to be individual at the end of the day.
Man, we're getting to a lot of good topics here. I'm trying to chill. I'm like, God damn, like this is going fast. I love that book.
Yeah.
I've said that on other podcasts. 0 to 1. I read that for the first time last May, and it is easy for anyone to read. Number one, from one of the most brilliant people in the world.
Which is crazy because his normal conversations are very hard to get.
Oh my God, he's on another.
He's
wavelength.
all the way up there, yeah.
But whoever wrote this one with him, I think it was like one of his students or something. Yeah. They were like, "All right,
let me dumb it
down. We're gonna make this easy to digest, and it's also short.
Yes,
you can read it in like 2 hours.
Yep.
What I love about that book is that I love it because it makes me think a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether I agree or disagree with things on a case-by-case basis. There are certainly things in there that I 1,000% agree with. But then there's other things where it's like, well, you know what? And you can kind of look at it from both ends. And the monopoly one is probably the most difficult one for me to think of because I agree with what he asserts. And can you explain exactly what he's saying about competition so people know?
I'm going to botch it for sure.
High level, like not the...
just that, like, it's at the end of the day, that's what pushes innovation. I'm putting it in kind of my perspective.
Sure.
If you break everything apart, it's just... I don't know. Because like when some things I want to say, I feel like I shouldn't because it's gonna seem bad because to an extent, monopolies are kind of a bad thing. But like I said, they push innovation. They give me something to strive for. Like I want to become a Facebook. I want to become an Instagram. I want to become a Twitter. But if you break them apart, that you create too many niches.
Can I pick up where you left off?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because you're touching on the competition part to start, where the idea is that a bunch of players come into the game and the best player wins, and it's winner take all. That's what a monopoly becomes. So what you were saying is you had all these different people come in, like, or companies like maybe MySpace back in the day, even like a Pinterest, which is a little bit off to the side, right? Yeah. And then certain places won. So our attention goes to the Facebook-owned Instagram at this point. Like, even Instagram ended up beating Facebook.
Yeah.
And it goes to Twitter. It doesn't go to whatever the hell the other not Twitter is.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like they had to create the best product to be able to win, and therefore all of us, the users, the end user, we get the best utility because we get the best. And then I think what you were saying in the second half is that they're there to strive for and to try to disrupt in the future, meaning we live in a world where you could potentially innovate to beat a monopoly. Is that what you're getting at?
Absolutely.
Okay. I agree with that. The place where it gets a little murky for me is that how far along do places get where they then have too much power that there's an economy of scale that can't be unseated?
Well, that's what we're seeing with Facebook, right? Like, not to knock on Zuck, because, you know, if he could kill any platform that someone wants to create at the end of the day.
Yep.
But there's sort of like an evil inner child inside of him, it seems like. You know what I mean? And then
who doesn't know how to drink water?
Yeah. And it's robotic to an extent. Like, he's not even personable. You don't even feel like you're speaking to a real human. It's just like, you get the sense that he doesn't care about anything. He just wants to win, even if it kills him at the end of the day. And you lose, in social networks specifically, you want to have that kind of, you want to create a situation where there's human connection, right? And I feel like the way he's going about things, because he is just so robotic in his, you know, words and how he acts and everything, he's losing that disconnect to people. And that's starting to push people away. And then you go in the whole censorship hole, like that's a whole other story.
Yeah, we're going to stay with that because it's all this stuff is all tied together. You just happen to introduce, of what I remember, like 4 or 5 themes that are all interconnected, even if we don't always think of it that way. That's why I like this. But how do you feel about Bezos?
So I didn't mind him at all. You know, I thought he was doing a lot of good for the world in a sense, until the removal of Parler from the servers. And then he just put himself on blast almost with that, because now we're living in a space where you have to worry about if you can even publish an app, if you're even able to collect any data, like anything at all. Your app's going to die. You can't, it's not live anymore. So he dug himself a hole, and now I'm starting to change my opinion on him because of that, and because it hurts the next class of entrepreneurs at the end of the day.
Yeah. He's a prime example of when people get really, really rich through these monopolies.
Yeah. It's
easy for everyone to go at them.
Yep.
You know, especially with the growing wealth gap that's been happening for 35 years now.
Right.
It's natural. We have all the tools, their tools, to use to be able to put it public to go at them. So I get it. My attitude always was, I don't give a fuck. Like,
yeah, he never did anything crazy.
You know, Jeff Bezos has $150 billion. God bless. Hopefully he uses some of it for good, and if he doesn't, fuck him. But, like, what does that have to do with my day?
No. He also employs 500,000 people.
Sure.
So, like, he is doing something good for the country. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And then I still believe that if the vaccine situation, that's a whole nother case. But if we gave...
You're just hitting all of them, man.
If we gave the vaccines to Amazon, everyone would have them in 2 days. You know what I mean?
All right, let's not go there.
But that's basically what I'm getting at. Like, he tries to do a lot of good for the world, and then he just fucked himself with the whole Parler situation.
So,
because AWS is probably 50% of their revenue at least.
And to be clear, just context for people that aren't aware, Parler was an app that was like supposed to be a competitor to Twitter that kind of became like a right-wing app just because none of the left wing went there. And it wasn't just Amazon, but Apple took them off the App Store in coordination with them getting deplatformed from other places, and then their literal web hosting service, which is AWS, Amazon Web Services, Amazon came in and said, oh, we're not hosting you anymore. So they actually took their website offline, which is the definition of tamping down on speech.
Yep.
So that definitely is a huge red flag. I shared your opinion on that for a long time with him, where I didn't care, like I was saying. And even as recently as, I don't know, 5-6 months ago, first of all, let's get one thing straight. Guy built maybe the best company I've ever seen.
Yep.
My experience with Amazon is incredible. I have no complaints. I have never had in fact, anytime I had a bad experience there, because of like some delivery that was broken, they fixed it and some.
Yep.
And had me on the line with like multiple people who I then feel compelled to fill out all these surveys about. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's an incredible company. That is not, you can't get that innovation lost here. My problem is, one guy in particularly, but a bunch of people were in my ear going, you need to really look at this. You need to look at this guy. Look at his actions. You can't know him. You're not behind closed doors with him. You can't look him in the eyes. Some people can hide when you do that, but you don't know him, right? So look at his actions. And there's no end. There's no end. Now he's going after pharmacies. So how is he going to go after pharmacies? He's going to use, same thing he's always done, use all of his brilliant economies of scales that he built brilliantly to go in and lose a fuck ton of money and wait it out for all these other competitors who don't have all these other businesses to die. And then he controls that. And then he'll go to the next thing and the next thing. And at what point do you start to say, well, Amazon controls everything?
Yeah.
And what does that, I always think about the line that guys cross. It's like crossing the chasm, right? Where one day you just lose sight of what you're doing because you're lost in the game. And to me, he's been lost in that. And, you look at stuff like, why are you buying the Washington Post? It's a terrible business.
Yeah.
Why do you need that? Why, when I open up my Kindle, which I love, use a Kindle, get all my books on Amazon, will continue to do so. Hate me for it.
Yeah.
But why, when I open that up, is everything pushing me the Washington Post?
Right.
And if by the same token, let's say Parler had created this big company. If you opened up the Parler Kindle, if they were a powerful company like Amazon, and they were pushing you Fox News, why would they be doing that? And then what if you found out their owner owned Fox News? How would you feel about that? All these news sources are so far right or so far left. And then you look at this guy right in the middle of it. Yeah. And now he's talking about buying CNN. Wait till Murdoch teams up with someone and Fox News gets more out of control to respond to that. Yeah. This is bad for society.
Absolutely.
That's my point. And maybe it's the radical centrist view, but I can think on one hand, hey, great innovator, build an unbelievable company, fuck if I appreciate it. And on the other hand, hey, those actions look mad sketchy, dude.
Yeah, and then it becomes full circle to the monopoly aspect. Once you control a lot of things, and you start to be able to control narratives. And that's ultimately, in this day and age, that's all that matters, what narrative you control and how you're pushing it. So I guess it's going to be we're going to have to see how the playing field ends up, what agenda he ends up pushing. Because as of now, from what I've seen, and I could be wrong about this, he hasn't really been pushing one side or the other too hard. He's kind of been in the middle of things too. But then you have to kind of see what happens with the actions of all the businesses he's acquiring at the end of the day. Yeah,
the one place I will definitely push back on that, where, people will give the Washington Post shit because it very clearly was anti-Trump. But I think we're going to start seeing the difference between, I hope we're going to start seeing the difference between anti-Trump and anti-right thought, right? Right side of the aisle thought.
Yeah.
I think that there was a separation there. It's scary to me that after Trump is gone, and it's only been a few weeks, but after he's gone, I'm seeing a lot of people double and quadruple and triple down on that. We'll come back to the censorship on this, because now you're talking about just going after an entire school of thought, which is not healthy, to say nothing of the actual repercussions of that. But I will say, outside of the anti-Trump rhetoric, the thing about the Washington Post, who through maybe part of their anti-Trump rhetoric, it's all tied together. The thing about them being a newspaper who openly advocated for, continues to, locking things down, stopping the economy, masking it under, I did not mean to use the word masking there, no pun intended, masking it under saving lives, right? And yet the guy who owns them stands to benefit more than anyone else from that.
That's a good point.
That's scary.
Yeah. That's very scary, especially because he's probably profiting on all the distribution of, the masks and everything like that.
I didn't even think of that, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is. So, and even if he wasn't, the other stuff.
Yeah.
Where did I get these cameras?
Yeah, right. Right.
I ain't gonna lie. Like, Amazon, everything's Amazon.
See you in 2 days.
Probably the coldest call I ever had, coldest ice cold freezing take of all time was at the beginning of Corona. I was saying to guys, I'm like, man, you really got to sell Amazon. You got to sell Netflix because people are going to be poor through this. Like we're going to be really poor.
That's the crazy part, right? Is that everyone thought people were losing a ton of money, but then why did their sales go up so much? Where did all this money come from? Netflix too. Subscriptions through the roof.
Through the roof.
Where did all this come from?
The Netflix one, I think I got cognitively biased on because I talked to a few people like the week before Corona hit, like rich people.
Yeah.
And who were just really good about their finances, and they're like, look, some shit's happening, so we just canceled our Netflix. It's easy. It just makes me feel good. I took $12 off my month, and I'm like, well, if she's canceling, like what's the guy who's behind on his bills and in debt doing?
Exactly.
Like you want to gamify, like, the world's ending, I'm losing everything, I'm going to lose my house, but let me try not to. Let me gamify my expenses. Oh, I can take Netflix off. There's $12. Like. That didn't happen.
No, that definitely did
People
not
were
happen.
like, I need that goddamn Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Corona flipped all the power to all these major tech organizations. But I would say maybe a week into Corona, when I looked in the front area of the apartment and continued to see it piling up with Amazon every day, I was like, this might not slow down.
No, never. I don't think it's going to either. I don't see any signs of it stopping.
And he's done like some things, like he pays all his workers $15 now, but then turns around and won't let them unionize. It's like, I don't really know with him. But the Peter Thiel monopoly argument that started this whole thing, I always say I love that he introduces that because in theory he's correct.
Yeah.
It's the idea that if these things are so great, it gives us all the most utility, like we were saying. So in theory, for the picture part of a storybook of your life, you should love Instagram, right? Mm-hmm. That's where you go. For the sharing a group chat thought, you should love Twitter. Yep. That's where quick ideas are. If you want to watch a video, you go to YouTube. But you also talked about the government having to come in and regulate some of this stuff while coming at it from the lens of like, oh, don't break up the monopolies. And this is what interests me because I get what you're saying. And I have the same thought too. And then I start to think to myself, well, do I want it both ways if I'm saying it like that?
And it's also a question of, can you actually have it both ways?
I don't think you can.
That's the issue. Because then, we've seen how our government reacts to things. If they do step in and do some sort of regulation, it's probably going to be the extreme.
The government? No.
So then how do we dig ourselves back out of that hole when, to be honest, technology is one of the greatest things about the United States and how much we push innovation. That's what keeps things going. I do work with companies in other countries, and they still, till this day, even when they saw us, up in flames over the past couple of months, they still want to come here and live the American dream.
That's interesting. Like guys you're talking to firmly are like, I want to go.
The opportunity is just, that's honestly what humbles me, is talking to these people, because as bad as things seem here, compared to other countries, it's not at all. Like we just saw.
And what countries specifically? You tend to talk to people in?
India, a lot of Asian countries. Mm-hmm. Not really Singapore, but Singapore to an extent. But Singapore has a good, tech culture over there. Mm-hmm. So they are pushing a lot of things. The Apple store in Singapore is absolutely beautiful and blows away anything that we've seen in the States. But, even just like Japan, and then you see the issues with China. Like it's just, we have a lot of opportunity here that people don't really take advantage of, and we take for granted.
Retweet on that, man. and that's the thing. Even when things get really bad, and there's a lot to be very concerned about right now. And I promise we're going to keep circling back around to some of this stuff just because there's so many things in the wind right now that we already brought up. We'll get back to it. But even when things look this bad, it's still way better than the alternative. Now, if you're talking with people in China, I'm curious on that. because I feel bad for a lot of people there because they have access to so many great innovations and access to a lot of great education too.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. But it seems like there are a lot of people who are still very aware that they don't really have freedom. Do you find that, or do you think more people have just kind of accepted, the Communist Party's culture there?
Well, that depends on who you talk to and kind of what industry you're in. Technology, we're in a situation where 9 times out of 10 people are trying to break rules. They're trying to push boundaries and come up with the next thing and try to pave the way and help regulate things in a different aspect. But then on the flip side of that, you see Jack Ma, the richest man on the continent, says one little sentence that could potentially piss off the government. He didn't even directly come at them. But just because of that, he had to go into hiding for months. The richest man in the continent. Where anyone would know if he disappeared because he's involved in so many things. But yet he still had to go into hiding.
That, to this point, none of that happens here.
Yeah, exactly.
If some dark shit happens, they get to Kennedy and the CIA killed him or something, we talk about it incessantly. And it's not talked about, right?
Yep.
And it's more one-off because our society is able to push back with the free speech, and theirs is not. It's controlled. And that's the part that does have me worried because you still, obviously, you have a lot of these people talking to you saying they want to come here and everything, but even if they don't realize it, a big part of the reason they want to come here is because we've built a culture where people can say whatever the fuck they want,
Absolutely.
Whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, right? So now we're looking at this where if you can decide that, oh, well, we don't like that platform, we like this one, now you can make that decision. And now you can take things drawn along political lines. And frankly, when you look at the Twitter example and it wasn't just Trump, there's a lot of other things that happened there. When they did that, they gave him room to have a platform on it. So if you just were kind of sick of him and you wanted him to go away, let's be honest, he doesn't know how to go away, so he wouldn't have gone away. Yeah. I'm not like, oh, Trump was going to suddenly be quiet. Of course not. But if you wanted him to kind of dig his own grave, as he already had,
yep,
just leave him.
Yeah.
Just leave him.
Yeah.
But they made that decision, and then they made a decision to go after all the QAnon accounts and everything, which selfishly, hey, love not seeing those things on Twitter.
Yeah.
My problem is they're not going after the opposite side, who, in their own fucked up way, is saying things. And so now the volume continues to skew this way. And the more it does, people start to think about what they're saying.
Yeah.
You'd
hope.
You'd hope.
You'd hope.
What do you mean by that?
One thing I've kind of seen just over the landscape is that it's hard. Just when you think you understand of the direction of something's going, you really don't, because then one person will fuck it all up by saying something crazy. And they don't even know the extent to the power of what they said.
No, there's a clear line though here. When you're like what Steve Bannon said. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
He's kind of a crazy person. He got deplatformed.
Okay.
Fully support it. It wasn't First Amendment protected. I'm not going to repeat what he said, but he was calling for visual violence upon public figures, where he described exactly how he hopes it would happen. Like how they would do it. When you have, by the way, post-election, all his listeners are angry, right? When you have millions of people listening to you, that's a platform. That is textbook inciting violence. Textbook. People have accused Trump of inciting violence at that rally, and you could make the argument. But it was more, if anyone incited violence, it's probably Giuliani. But it's hard to prove in a court of law.
Yeah.
What Steve Bannon said, a jury's going to convict in 5 minutes on that, right? Yep. So when he gets deplatformed, that's fine, but do it from every angle too. If you're going to deplatform him, deplatform Kathy Griffin for holding up a head of Trump, right? Like that. That's a direct. It's like a direct assault on someone's name in a visual,
absolutely,
right? So there is a line with what's speech and what's not speech. But when you start attacking ideas and then trying to put it under the lens of words like hate speech and stuff like that, well, now you're getting outside of what not free speech is, what inciting is.
But then who's the one to draw that line?
Who's the one
That's
to draw?
the question that keeps me up at night.
Who do you think should draw it?
Like I said, it keeps me up at night trying to figure that out, because at the end of the day, it's a complex situation, right? Because they are private companies, even though they're publicly traded. So even the CEO doesn't have ultimate say, because they have,
That's a great point.
there's so much funding behind these companies that the CEO ultimately probably owns 10% of the company. So what about the other 90% that are owned by hedge fund guys and stuff like that? And then you have your board, the board ultimately, if you don't have control of, they tell you what to do and you have to do it. Mm-hmm. So how do you even know? Like we were talking about Jack Dorsey. How do we even know he's the one's making the shot, calling shots?
You're maybe the only person I've talked to who raises that as a possibility. I've raised that as a possibility.
It's true.
So
though.
you think there's a possibility that he is not?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I don't know who specifically. I know a couple of his investors, but I don't know who owns the largest chunk and, who actually sits on the boards. But that is a huge possibility, because we can put the blame as much as we want on Dorsey, but he might not be the one calling the shots. And the same thing with, Facebook's just a whole mess, because, even the guys that Zuck brought on board with him weren't the best in that aspect.
What do you mean?
Just in terms of like the censorship and stuff, they all have very strong views.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So it's like, who is the one to draw the line? Because if it isn't the CEO and it is the board, but then ultimately you have the government involved too, how do you navigate that landscape of really who should be the one drawing that line?
And that's the other side too, in a nutshell, because by the way, if you break up these companies, well, who's breaking them up?
Yeah.
The government.
Yep.
So if you utilityize, that's not the word, but we'll make that up. If you utilityize, or whatever it is, let's just say Facebook.
Yeah.
And now you make it like water, which I don't know the whole legality around this, but let's just, broad example, the government comes in and gets control of that.
Yeah.
Well, now the government controls the internet in that way.
Yeah, and that's what we don't want to happen.
Right? So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
They already control the media, and we see how that goes.
Yeah.
So imagine if they took over social media and the internet.
My other little theory on Dorsey, put on my little tinfoil hat here. I'll always say, like, if I'm about to say something that is just based on, sitting at my desk and thinking about it, like, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't have anything to prove this other than, again, like what I see and trying to read between the tea leaves here. But I have somewhat of a acceptance that there are groupthink forces that operate within major organizations, obviously the government too, and people like to put the deep state label on it, and sometimes that gets taken out of control, but I believe that there is an aspect to that, right? And so when I look at Trump, regardless of everything he says or what his policies are and all that, the one thing that everyone can admit on him is that he was an outsider.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So he was, from the private sector, he was a fucking reality TV star. He also, I think everyone can agree, is very rash and does whatever the fuck he wants.
Yeah.
Right? So you've had two parties control Washington, D.C. since the beginning of time. They have accrued more power, sway, and money than ever before with each passing year. Fair?
Fair.
Okay. The thing about the government, the rest of it, I'm not talking even Congress, I'm not talking Senate, I'm talking the agencies, the bureaucracies. It could be everything from the NSA and CIA to like the people who work in the office jobs in the federal buildings.
Right.
Those people were there before a president gets there, and they're going to be there after they leave. And their whole thing is they're milked into the process, and like anyone else, they like their job. They want to be able to continue to have that and then be able to move up. So let's say like when Obama came in government, like everywhere else in all these agencies, you have Republicans, you have Democrats, and then you probably have a few people who are apolitical.
Right.
But most of them, they're going to lean one way or the other.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to these days to get in those positions.
Sure. And that's even more evidence to say it. So let's even assume that they're all one way or the other. Mm-hmm. When Obama came in, there's no way the people who were on the right wing of government liked him or were fans of him.
No.
They voted against him.
Right.
He's kind of a typical Democrat president. Fine. The worst thing you ever saw, at least publicly, was like a General McChrystal who just like said a few things behind his back and then got fired.
Yeah.
Right? And that was it. The reason is Obama comes in and he was from government. And so he runs on de-escalating in the Middle East and not using drones and shit. Becomes the most drone-happy president of all time. I also don't even fault him for it because what I think is that kind of green senator when it comes to foreign policy and understanding what's going on over there. He comes in, was a political superstar, had a lot of good ideas domestically, whatever. Gets into office, had all these ideas about foreign policy. And then suddenly they come to him day one. They go, sir, here's all the threats we have. This guy's going to kill these people. And by the way, if this happens, you're to blame for it. Everyone's going to hate you. And it's like, oh my God, I just got to listen to these guys.
Yeah.
So he plays the game.
Yeah.
So all the Republicans in government who may like secretly be like, yo, fuck that guy or whatever, they appreciate that he plays the game.
Yep.
When Trump comes in there, if it's like the wrong day with his Diet Pepsi, he's not playing the game.
He's not playing the game. No.
It doesn't matter if you're right or left.
No.
Like if a hard right-wing government official comes in there who's used to a certain way of things being done and says, Mr. President, X is happening, we need to take this action, and Trump goes, fuck you, get out of my office. That guy is going to look to destroy him.
Yes.
So in a lot of ways, and it obviously wasn't every single person in government, but the one thing about him is that every person in government a lot of people in government, not every person, was looking to delegitimize him, to do things to stop him from doing things. And guess what? Sometimes it might have been like the right thing to do, but who are you to draw that line? So then I come back and I look at big tech and everything, and I look at this power structure, and I look at a guy like Dorsey. And here's the thing. Again, we've talked about it 4 times now. I look at actions.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when Jack Dorsey went on Joe Rogan almost 2 years ago now.
Yep.
It was a regular conversation. Joe was just talking with him. I loved it, right?
Yeah.
And then I didn't even think to realize they didn't talk about censorship on
Right.
it.
Yeah.
So what happened? The internet blew a gasket. Tim Pool blew a gasket.
Yep.
Rogan brings on Tim Pool to like almost apologize, right?
Yeah.
And Rogan says to Tim Pool, hey, if I got Jack to come back in here, would you come in?
Right.
And he's like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, this is never going to work. Calls up Jack. Jack goes, all right, bet I'll be there next week. What kind of guy? He knew he's not dumb.
No.
He knew he was going to get body bagged in there.
Yes.
He even brought Vijada, or sorry, I forget her name, but his head of global compliance, basically,
Yeah.
and legal.
Yep.
He brought her with him. He knew they were going to get crushed on the biggest podcast in the world.
Which takes balls, man.
Balls. And he openly let it happen and was, might I add, extremely... He had a very good disposition during that whole thing.
Yeah.
He didn't flip out because Tim Pool was upset, and he had a right to be.
Definitely.
But Dorsey never lost his cool. And then when they had the hot mic after, he was talking with Tim Pool, so you knew like he was pretty cool. And I'm like, that guy, who's also very, very smart, he's openly calling the shots and doing all this and looking like a complete goon.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't add up.
No. But then...
So is it the deep state?
yeah,
that was the end of the punchline there. That was my whole point with the government.
But then you could also say, like, is he just pulling an Obama and playing the game?
Well, one question on that. Obama's the president, and I guess if you wanted to get JFK conspiracy, technically that could take out the president. Yeah. Not saying that happened, just saying it happened. Anyway, but Obama is at the top of the food chain. Even if we're talking about all this power these companies have, they technically have to report to the president, right? He can still go to fuck them. So
until they remove him. Right,
until they remove him. But at the time, let's say that he has people coming to him saying, you have to do this.
Right.
Oh, your sister's in a basement somewhere. There's some black ops guy with a gun to her head.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that happened. That's a ridiculous situation. But is
Right.
it? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest thing is I feel like I don't know anything anymore. Each way you look, you just don't know who's telling the truth, and then 2, is it real? Or is it just their own truth? Or is that what's actually going on?
The media is really complicit too.
Yeah, very much.
I mean, do you consume any mainstream media?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I stay far away from all that.
Yeah.
The only thing, and I don't even consider it media. Why am I drawing a blank? The Hill,
and they're like centrist, dude.
That's why I love them, because you have 2 people who are on each side of the coin, but they always, when there's a disagreement, they handle it civilly. And then they get to almost, I don't want to say a solution. In some certain circumstances, they do get to a solution together. But that's how it should be. You shouldn't be polarized one way or the other. It's almost like today, we've lost the power to say no. Because if you say no, you get labeled an extremist one way or the other. You can't just be in the middle. You can't just be fighting for everyone.
That's a black and white answer, but it's where a black and white answer actually should be. It's true.
Yeah.
You're like afraid to say the wrong thing based on who you're talking with.
Exactly.
That you don't.
You don't.
Like,
exactly.
Right?
You just shut up.
I don't even know how I said that, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And I think it was you actually. You posted a clip from The Hill with Eric Weinstein.
Yep.
Right? That was awesome.
Yes.
And he's a savage, dude.
He is an absolute savage. That's why him and Peter Thiel go well together, because they don't just feed you things that you should be doing. They ask questions that make you go home and think about it. They're not just telling you what to do and what you shouldn't do. They're making you think about what's, in a sense, best for you.
Yeah. Did you ever hear the first episode, I think, that Weinstein did on his podcast where he had on Thiel?
Yes.
Yeah. You listen to that for like an hour and you're like, man, I really fucked up in my life. But it's true, because they question, little plug for the show here, they question the status quo.
Yeah.
You know, they don't really accept things. But he's going through like Clubhouse. He just goes room to room and he's like, listen, all you are going to fucking hate me. But listen, you righties, you're idiots. You lefties, you're goons. All right, I'm going to the next room now.
Yep.
But the thing is, like, he's so smart. He lays out this like dissertation case in like a minute and leaves. And people are just like, all right. Next speaker.
Yeah, that's why I love him. He does a mic drop in every conversation that he's in.
It's amazing.
But he's very valid, and almost, I would argue, a majority of his points, if not all of them.
Now, why doesn't a guy like that run for office?
Because he's too smart. He can't be controlled. We see it in the physics community. A lot of people don't like Eric Weinstein because he's so vocal with his opinions, and he doesn't go with the norms, because at the end of the day, it's kind of a political situation too, because all these physicists and scientists are employed by a university who's funded by who?
Yeah.
And he doesn't fuck with any of that.
It's great. It's groupthink 101.
Exactly.
Money talks with it too. Yeah, I go back and forth. I say Weinstein, say Weinstein. It is Weinstein, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not friends with the guy. I wish I was, but I'm pretty sure that's it.
You're a big fan.
Yeah.
His brother is awesome too.
Yes.
And his brother is more openly ideological.
Yes.
He's more of a traditional, I guess I would say, like 2000s liberal type, and just one of the smartest people I've ever heard talk. But you mentioned like the power structure of people like that running for office. He had a great idea, in my opinion, around that. And I think probably the saddest part about it was that as he was saying it, I said, this will never happen, but I still loved it. And what he was talking about was this, before he even started talking about a third party scenario, he was saying, hey, we already know the presidency's a dated job in the sense it was created when there weren't nearly as many things to handle on a day-to-day basis. So it's like the symbolic job. But what if you had a dual leadership where it wasn't someone really hard left or really hard right, but it was someone who was a little bit left and someone who was a little bit right, and you could balance them off? And I listened to that, I'm like, man, that would be perfect.
I'd even go further. I said this to a couple friends that I've had this conversation with. I'd even go further as having a group of 7 people, because if you have 2, what happens if there's a disagreement? Who's calling the shot? It's almost like in a company, right? In startups, when you're kind of building a company, as much as you want to strive for 50-50 equal ownership, there needs to be someone who owns more, because at the end of the day, you're going to get into tough conversations. You're going to need to have someone who ultimately has the power to say, we need to do this, whether you like it or not. And it might be a bad decision, and if it is, it comes back on me.
And that's usually how great ideas die, when they when early on they don't have that conversation.
Exactly.
Or they get into a position where they actually have to make or break decisions, and they can't because like legally they can't.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yep. So if you have a group of 7 people who are leading the country, you can bring in top leaders in science, medicine, politics, every industry, and then you can come collectively together and try to get an educated decision on any topic because you have the brightest minds in every space. Yeah. And in that aspect, maybe Eric Weinstein hops up and he's one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, it's a shame that I agree with you right away. He just would never do it.
No, never.
But also, I would never do it. Not that I'm like smart at all, but who wants that job?
No.
Who wants to be in that world?
No.
Because you immediately get tagged. You know, we're still living in this society where you have these two parties who have complete opposite ideological beliefs, and you can only choose one. Or at least that's what society tells you.
That's what society tells you.
Which is crazy.
Yep.
Because there's millions of issues. I was just talking about this on a podcast with someone. There's millions of issues on both sides. So you mean to tell me that you are going to say, I completely agree with everything that one school of thought thinks?
It's crazy to even have that expectation of people. Just because upbringings alone, everyone's situation is so radically different. How can you expect them to have the same exact thoughts?
Not even, and you might even be referring to this, but where people are from.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Like not even just their environment growing up,
Yeah.
Not even what they dealt with. Just, is that guy from Iowa? Is that guy from New York?
Yep.
They're not, and that's a healthy thing.
Yeah, it is. But we can't, that's not healthy anymore in today's world. You can't have those civil debates. It's either you're with us or you're against us.
That's what I worry about, because if you say, worry about it, I mean, we do it on this podcast all the time, so I guess we're just leaning in, but whenever you start to say like, hey, they'll label you, and they'll say like, oh, you must be a hard right winger because you stand up and say, oh, this censorship ain't it.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of hard right wingers who are pounding that table.
Absolutely.
On Twitter. My problem is that there were a lot of people cheering when Trump got deplatformed, and I'm like, you're not going to be cheering when it's you.
Yeah, you don't know the repercussions of that, the long-term effects either.
It's already happening.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Bret Weinstein had the one where his Twitter account got banned.
Yeah.
Great liberal professor.
Great.
Had the audacity to talk about, after that first idea, the two system, he talked about a third party just in general, banned the account.
Yep.
Then Facebook banned him by accident.
Yeah.
Big air quotes.
Yeah.
And then they got so much shit for it on Twitter that they said, oh, it was an accident.
And then one day his account just magically reappears.
Yeah. One day it's gone, no warning, saying this cannot be reversed. And then, boom. Oh, it was a mistake. We're back. It's like they thought they could get away with it.
I don't know how either, because they're so in the public eye just with everything. And that brings it back to the Robinhood situation. How?
Yes.
How the hell can you do that? They didn't even try to hide anything. It's like they live streamed the boardroom conference almost.
That's it. What's the company Citadel? Is that it?
Yes.
Who bought into the other hedge funds?
Yes.
So Citadel
Bailed them out.
Right. They bailed out the hedge funds that were really short.
Yes.
Citadel, these are the early numbers coming in, so we'll fact check this after. But Citadel clears a ridiculous amount of trades through Robinhood. It was like 40 or 60%, like a huge number. So they are vital to Robinhood's business. And Citadel, who stands to lose a fuck ton of money if the retail investor keeps buying on Robinhood these stocks, because, it's a time situation with the shorts. Like, how much can you stand to lose
right.
with these options expiring? Citadel is the one that gained the most from giving people the only option of a sale.
Yeah.
And it's in broad daylight. So if they didn't, do they think that the government can't say to them, and maybe the government will protect them, who the fuck knows at this point.
Seriously.
But do they think they can't say to them, oh, yeah, let's see that cell phone, pal. Let's look at those records.
Yeah.
Like, what do they think this is?
Oh, dude, it's wild. It really is wild. I just don't get how you can be so public about it and think nothing was going to happen. And I mean, who knows? Maybe, like you said, nothing will happen. But if it's not from you know, I don't even know who would end up suing them, but you would hope it's almost the companies that were involved in the situation too, because they just halted trading on their stock.
I got to think they're going to do something.
You have to, right?
We haven't heard from them because they're just sitting there. It's not their fault. They're caught.
No,
they did nothing to do this.
No.
And like it kind of fucks them because it's going to, in the long term, it's going to kill them because
Absolutely.
it's going to come
It's gonna shoot it
crashing
all
down to
back. Yep,
earth.
Yep.
And it's not their fault that happened. But yeah, I would think they're definitely looking at this going, all right, we can't control that this happened. Hate that this whole thing started. But like these people do love our company.
Yeah.
They got fucked by the big man. The big man was trying to fuck us too.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's join in. Let's do, and can't change it now. You know, let's do something about it.
Imagine being the CEO of GameStop in that boardroom when the stock shot up. You're thinking you got to save your company from dying, and then all of a sudden, bang.
If I were him, I would just and he would take the call. I'd get Elon on the phone, and I'd say, please just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
like literally, I'm going to give you my options for this year. Just tell me what to do, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Give me a tweet. Give me something.
Give me something. Yeah, because all it takes nowadays is a tweet from Elon to cause some ruckus there.
You know what, though? The circle of life is what, at the very beginning of this conversation, you identified it. They did it in public because they just watched the biggest things get done in public. And they're like, well, if platforms can just get away with banning a sitting president and have half the country cheer him on, that's a generalization, have a lot of people in this country cheer him on, well, maybe we can get away with this and then have powerful people in this case cheer us on.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a slippery slope.
It's super slippery. And it takes, we already said this once, but it takes huge balls to do something like that.
Do you think about, and we'll get to what you do. We already touched on it, but do you think about the slippery slope of tech a lot?
All the time, just because I'm always thinking of new ideas and potentially just starting this, starting that, and then just the landscape right now is so uncertain. It's almost disheartening in a sense because you don't have a clear path of what direction it's going to end up being.
Yeah. And what specifically, actually, let's just go there. So right now what's your official title working with MoonShot Guru?
I am partner and I lead sales and strategy for MoonShot Guru.
Okay. And MoonShot Guru is a company out of India.
Yes, but we have a satellite office in New York as well, so we kind of operate in both countries.
And you're the global head of this?
Yes. Well, I would say I lead U.S. operations majority.
Got it. So specifically, what do you guys do?
So we're a venture growth builder, and we work with a bunch of startups that are they are in the growth phase. So they have majority market capture in the United States, for example, and our goal is to help them expand that and go globally.
So you do deal with a lot of U.S. companies.
Oh,
then.
yeah.
Okay, I actually wasn't sure about that because I thought maybe you dealt with a lot of Southeastern Asia companies.
No, there's only one company in our cohort, and that's only because of the CEO has a relationship with the guy, and he's just kind of mentoring him in that aspect and helping him grow his business in the country. But majority of the companies are U.S., U.K. We do some in Latin America and basically help them grow over there because, you know, India's not India specifically, but Asia is an enormous market, and
Sure.
India specifically is 2 billion people.
And since you guys are based out of there, obviously you know that market very well, so you have a good value proposition
Correct.
to be able to say we can deliver.
Yep.
Okay. What size of startups do you guys target?
Series B or greater. So they have at least, for the people who don't know, in the fundraising space, you know, there's a pre-seed round, which is typically the initial phase of a startup. You're just getting going. It's almost a friends and family round. Mm-hmm. And then you graduate to the seed phase where you have some traction, you're establishing product market fit, and you're typically going to raise like maybe 1 to 2 million. And then you get into your Series A round, which is kind of you're starting to really scale. You got product market fit, and you're starting to gain a lot of traction. And then from there on, it's just super hyper growth.
So you're looking at businesses that have clear product in market and humming.
Yep.
And so now it's just about literally scaling rather than just planting the seeds of what you're going to do in the future.
Right. Yep.
It's both, but they're already like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, at that point, you raised $50 million plus. You probably have at least 40 to 50% market capture in the United States. So you're kind of looking at other ways to grow that product offering without adding ancillary things to your business.
What do you guys call yourself? Do you call yourself venture capitalists or do you call yourself more like consultants?
So, I mean, the technical term is a venture growth studio, but we do have a $5 million investment fund attached to it. So we do invest in companies that we work with and we really enjoy their product.
Okay.
So it's kind of like an all, and I don't want to say one-stop shop, but in a way it kind of is, because we help. If you need marketing help, we have guys with that. If you need further product development, we have a team of engineers we can deploy to you. And then fundraising too, we have a huge network plus the investment fund.
Okay. And what types of projects are you looking at in tech, or is it just like in general? Like, are you going to invest in artificial intelligence versus, a hardware product, or do you have a sweet spot?
So we basically stay away from hardware. It's all software-based businesses, and then artificial intelligence is a big sweet spot. Green energy type startups that are helping in that space, offset carbon and all that. And then a big one's blockchain. Because we have, our guys are big in blockchain, and then
you're in the strike zones here. This fintech too. It's like, wow, you just hit like 4 right there. That's great. So let's start with the blockchain, because that's a bigger one. People run around, they say blockchain, blockchain, blockchain. A lot of people don't know what the fuck it means, and people at this point, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are aware it has to do with the crypto community and these things. But blockchain is, in my opinion, one of the greatest technological developments ever.
Yes.
Because it just has so many things that puts power in the hands of the people. And even though it was introduced on Bitcoin as the underneath ledger type deal, it has applications in so many things that have nothing to do with money.
That's the biggest thing, is the use cases.
So what are you guys looking at?
The various use cases. It's unbelievable. Yeah, something that I've been looking into personally is the NFT space. I've just been introduced to that, which NFTs is non-fungible tokens. So it's basically tokenizing modern art in a way and digitizing it. So say one of your pictures, for example. Say it was a Van Gogh painting. Van Gogh's not with us, but imagine he was. You're essentially taking that and putting it online and creating a one of one. So then people can buy into that asset and kind of see it grow as a stock market, because paintings and stuff like that over time, like stocks, continue to grow in value. You're
securitizing things that previously weren't securitized.
Correct.
Well, you know what? That's interesting, because I missed that a little bit. I had Cole Kennelly in here, and he just brought that out of left field. He started walking me through NFTs. And I got it from the sense that, like, you own digital assets on stuff. I didn't realize it went, and he probably said that, I just probably missed it, but it goes that far. You're creating pieces of everything. So potentially there's no end in sight with what could be distributed on the internet as value.
And it even extrapolates into music, right? Like, think about Wu-Tang Clan, for example. They had that one album, I forget what it is, but it didn't get released to the public. It was kind of just behind the scenes. And then a couple people got it because they released a limited amount to, like, friends and family almost. So you're almost in a way have a one of one from that artist, but we're putting that online, so it's stored on my computer, right? But then over time, that would increase in value.
And you can sell it.
And online. You can sell it for, say in that case, it was gifted, right? But then 10 years in the future, people are going to want that.
Well,
put a price on it.
Here's a question on that. We saw all the ICOs in 2017 and early 2018 during the crypto bubble. And we saw a lot of them blow up because they were making tokens on different blockchain networks that were worthless, right? We still see some problems with this. If you're making NFTs, would it fall under the purview that they're trying to claim the ICOs now, which is, the SEC can come in and regulate all this stuff, or whatever organizations are within other governments that are the equivalent of the SEC?
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing about blockchain, is the decentralization aspect of it. How are you going to do that?
Governments find a way. That's the one thing. They do find a way. Like, when you start to take power from them, they'll find a way to take it back. But in theory, I guess what you're saying, and we should definitely talk about decentralization, but I guess what you're saying is there's only certain things that they can actually track.
Correct. But then also it's, in the NFT specifically, it's like, I don't really see the SEC or someone like that stepping in to regulate that aspect, because it's almost like it's an investment piece at the end of the day. People do it in the real world. They'll buy an Andy Warhol from 30 years ago and then sell it now for 10x. You know what I mean?
How much do you know about that business? The painting, the like high art painting?
A little bit. I have a friend who owns a business in Florida, but besides that, not much.
Yeah, I know some, but like I would say I'm a novice. But it's kind of, just on your point, it's kind of wild, the loopholes financially that you can find in that stuff.
Oh, in that aspect, yeah.
So I'm going to speak on some things that probably aren't entirely said correctly, but there's such things as like art in transit or something, like where you hold it, where it's physically being held, and then therefore if it's taxable there or not taxable there. And then if it's constantly moving, it never becomes taxable. And this is like the 100 million foot in the air view. This isn't like the exact view, but there's weird shit like that. So now introduce blockchain to this kind of space and technology. You can probably do a few things to be able to privatize, as far as like who knows what's where, your assets.
Yeah, I never thought of it in that aspect, but definitely.
So you guys are heavy in NFTs. That's a focus. No.
Not yet.
Okay, I missed that.
No, yeah. You asked, what am I interested in? And like, that's deal sourcing wise.
I forgot my own question.
No. I'm interested in NFT space just because the applications are endless. And then I'm even seeing some work done in like the virtual reality space. So people are hosting virtual art galleries with these one-of-one NFTs. So it's like you put this headset on, you're literally in a gallery, you get to walk around, see these things, because from that aspect, those are things you want to get into because they're actually one-of-ones and you don't see them anywhere else. You only see them if maybe you know the person, because they can't be published anywhere else. So you can put it in an art gallery and go around and see all these beautiful pieces.
And that's the whole thing about what's real and what's not, and what people appreciate is.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. Yeah. We can't go down that. I got to keep on Moonshot Guru here. So you guys are you involved at all on innovation within, say, the monetary space of blockchain, which that's what they're most familiar with because of Bitcoin?
The partners are. Myself, no, because I'm still somewhat of a novice in the space, so I'm trying to learn as I go as well. But it's more of just like applications of the protocols we're looking at, not essentially the monetary side of things.
Okay. I think I know what you mean, but in English, applications of the protocols.
So in blockchain, the whole thing is people know it as a token, like you said, ICO, and like as an actual alternative to the dollar. But what we're looking at is the technology behind the currency.
Yes. The utility of it.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's big in, and I know fewer examples off the top of my head, which is bad. I should go look at them because my one guy always tells me about them. But within like the fintech community, there's a lot of projects that are working on that have nothing to do with the actual transfer of money, but it has to do with like the record keeping.
Yes.
And they're utilizing blockchain. So that's something that you guys would look at.
Yes, definitely.
Because you also mentioned fintech.
Yes. From the security aspect alone, it's enormous. So there's, it's almost bulletproof in a sense. Not everything is bulletproof, but like I said, in a sense, which is huge in the fintech industry, and also from a transparency aspect too.
Okay. So blockchain, other things in fintech besides blockchain, what kind of stuff are you guys looking at?
Just like different banking applications and like situations in that.
So situations in that, I don't know if you want to go into this, if that's like the code word for I can't talk more, but if you can, what do you mean?
No, just like bookkeeping tools, stuff like that. Okay. Like a QuickBooks, competitors to that. And yeah, basically those things.
Okay. Artificial intelligence. That was the other one you mentioned. And this is another buzzword term people just kind of throw around and be like, oh yeah, it's like machines learning shit, which it's entirely correct. But a lot of people don't think about it in the context of when they go onto Instagram or when they go onto YouTube, and the fact that these are software artificial intelligence algorithms that are learning their every move down to their swipe of their finger on this for 2 seconds versus 1 second on that. So there are so many different silos that you could be looking into there. Do you guys focus on one specifically, or are you just kind of like, all right, if it's cool machine learning shit, we're looking at it?
Yeah, the latter for sure. But of recent, we've been targeting autonomous vehicles. And then like different applications of customer support, because that's a big, like you said, that's one of the greatest things of Amazon is their customer support is amazing.
Yeah.
So that really separates you from the rest of the pack almost, is how good your customer support is. So we've been looking at a lot of different applications in terms of artificial intelligence with that. There's one company specifically, I'm not going to drop their name, but they're creating a chat bot almost, but it functions 24/7, and it actually gets things done, because a typical chat bot is just spitting back information, right? Like if you go onto a website and you're trying to figure out how to get in contact with someone, the chat bot on the website will just spit back an article for you to read and figure it out yourself.
Is that also like if I go on a t-shirt website or something and I immediately get to the page, I make like one click, and then suddenly this thing pops up and a guy's like, "How can I help you?"
Yeah.
He's not really on that end.
No.
I've never looked into that.
No. 9 times out of 10 it's a bot.
Okay. So that's a similar service, but that's like the ultimate one-dimensional simple one right there, which is just like an auto. All right, that's going to pop up.
Right. But the way that the industry is moving, it's almost becoming a person to an extent. Like it can handle anything you throw at them, and it's not going to spit back a knowledge-based article that someone in your company made. It's going to actually give you action items of what you can do.
How do you go about sourcing companies to work with? This is something, guys in your position, like we don't ask enough. You know, like where you get it. It's like, oh, I'm in the world. Well, how do you get in there? Like, how do you say, like, this company's really going to go?
It's a fuck ton of groundwork. A fuck ton of groundwork. You're, in terms of actually sourcing deals, you're doing a ton of outreach, cold calls, cold emails, and then just reaching in your network, getting warm introductions and stuff like that. So it might seem cool from the outside, but like behind the scenes, it's a ton of work. And then at the end of the day, you have to do, once you actually speak to these companies, you have to meet with the founders, you have to do your due diligence, meet the team, actually prove in a sense that they are who they say they are and that their traction is where they're actually at. And then you have to look into the financials, and it's just, it's fun if you enjoy this stuff, which I do. But it's tough for a lot of people, I guess, because of you're doing a lot of sales too at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people like sales.
But and that's your sweet spot as far as what you're running globally for them. But are you heavily involved in that process where you're identifying projects to work with?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's interesting. So I like that.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of stereotypes, and it's not just in tech, it's in anything, where you have guys who are like, yeah, I'm on the sales side or whatever, even if you're running the global sales department like you are. And it's like, okay, well, you're pushing the product. You know, you're getting the orders of like, here's what it does, and then figure out the best way to give it to people. But when you see the integration, and I feel like a lot of tech companies are getting good at this, when you see the integration of the sales departments being a part of the process that builds the product or puts the end product on the table, it highly affects how effective, to use the word twice there, the sales are actually going to be in the end, because you not only understand what it is, you understand who you're working with and why you guys chose to do so.
Yeah, exactly. You have to not only understand your product, you also understand your market and your audience. And in like terms of sales, you need to understand how different companies can apply your product to their situation, because not every company is the same. Even within the same industry, there's radically different, companies within each space.
Yeah, I gotta remind me. I gotta hook you up with my guy Jake Dunlap.
Definitely,
former client in my last job. He's a major tech sales guy, like consultant out of New York and Austin, Texas, and so like he's in the world, and this is what he's talking about all the time. He's like, fucking salespeople don't understand their product.
Yeah, honestly, that is the thing.
And it's complicated.
It is complicated, but you need to know it like the back of your hand, ultimately.
Yeah.
And not just in the one, like I said, in the one sense that you've built it for. Because, once you ship a product, it's up to the users to tell you how they're going to use your product. So you need to learn each use case of how they're going to apply it.
Now, there's a question for you. When you went on Instagram for the first time, do you remember that?
Yep.
How easy was it for you to use?
To be honest, I would like to think it's fairly easy just because I'm technologically inclined. But I didn't use it for like 4 years.
Okay. All right, let's go to this example. Did you use Facebook pretty early on?
Yeah.
How easy did you find that compared to the rest of what the market offered?
At the time, it was pretty easy.
Right?
Yeah.
Meaning, like, you mess around a few hours, you start to know,
yeah,
all right,
I got
there's
a good
the profile,
grasp.
there's how I post something. Right,
Yep.
Simple. All the code that goes into this, all the ideas, but what if the user wants this or wants that? To get it into that type of simple basket for, like, the idiot to know. right? Like that's always how I judge it. Like, could I figure it out?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're good, man. Like that, anyone can do it.
A test for me is I'll give the phone to my dad and say, hey, let me see what you do with this. If he can't figure it out within a couple of minutes, I'm like, that's okay.
That's
we'll pass
brilliant.
on that.
That's like Warren Buffett 101 too. Like you walk in a restaurant, hamburger good, clean place, smile, served it to me, walk out happy, invest in the company.
Yeah, right.
You know, but that's what it is with software. And it's like the big paradox of software because we're creating all these amazing tools for people to use and we're trying to innovate and give people more options and more things that add convenience to their life. But the thing that separates the great companies, the ones that become the monopolies on whatever they are versus the ones that are like, who the fuck is that? Are the great ones figure out it doesn't just have to look beautiful. It has to be simple.
Yes. You need to be able, especially in today's day and age, everyone wants instant gratification, right? If you can't accomplish a task in 1 to 2 clicks, you're dead.
Right? Yeah. Right. And like even Instagram now, it's like personal for me, but that was such a beautiful app.
It was.
Now why? I'm not even gonna finish my sentence. Why isn't it?
Just because of the click situation alone, it takes too long to navigate to where I want to do, and now they're trying to push monetizing it so much that they're taking away from the true value and user experience that initially got everyone onto the app and how simple it was. I can't even find. I mean, now I can obviously, but it took me a while to get used to the notifications in the top right. Like, why is that not there? You want to create engagement between users. Why are you pushing that to the side? Because now they're trying to focus on making money so much, so they want to throw shopping in your face.
Now, if they had just moved that up there, you know, to make the change, maybe they had data that said the design was going to be good. Maybe that would have been fine. But they didn't. They put what you said was there. They put the shopping down there. There's 4 tabs at the bottom of Instagram. I couldn't even tell you what they look like right now or what they do.
Yep.
Because they added they gave the user more choice, which is like we talk about, it's the dichotomy of it. The user wants more choice, but no, they don't.
No, they don't.
Now, do you study like the Steve Jobs school of thought on this?
Yeah, he's my favorite guy.
Okay, so that makes sense because I'm hearing that and where you're going through. So I want you to talk about it, but Steve's biggest thing is like probably the best example, in my opinion, that I ever heard of him was when he shut down the what the hell was it called? I think it was like called the Edison or something. Like the Palm Pilot thing they had when he came back to the company. They had this Palm Pilot thing that had a, forget what it's called, but when you pull stylus.
And he hated the stylus.
And why did he hate the stylus?
Because it's just useless. Why would you can use your finger? You got 5 stylus.
You have 5. That was his line.
Styli, plural.
Stylized. We make up words here. It's okay. We're talking for a long time, but that's exactly it. And that's like his whole thing was, how can I pull back from this? How can I? Okay, we have a menu that has 5 options. How can we get it to 3?
Yep.
You know, and like Systrom and Krieger created this beautiful white app that a little old lady could figure out.
Literally.
Oh, I double tap and the heart gets red.
Yep.
You know, my former boss, who was not technologically inclined in the least, would sit at lunch and go like this, boop, 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 boop. He got it, right?
He got it.
You know, the same guy doesn't exactly type fast.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, right.
So,
he's still typing with like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying anything, but it's not fast.
No.
So, you know, I see that and I'm like, wow, that's great. And now you go on, not only do you have all those buttons, but all the little things. They add the clutter. They add all the little sponsored text below stuff. They add the options. You go to your page. Well, now you have to do an IGTV through here. And by the way, what's an IGTV? Now you have to go do your post through this page right here. And here's how you size. They're all sized differently.
Yeah, and that's another thing is you can't even go to the bottom of the screen and click the plus button to make a post.
Yeah,
that's gone.
Yeah.
So it's like you're limiting people actually using the app for its actual purpose.
Yeah, and
all in sacrifice of monetization.
And that's the end of it, though.
Yeah, that's literally the end.
Because they're a public company now.
Yeah, and they're owned by Facebook.
Exactly. But yeah, when I refer to Instagram, I'm just referring to Facebook in general. Sorry. Right. But they have a quarterly to match. They have investors to keep happy. And this goes back to the whole circle of life of capitalism and free markets and government and the relationship. You know, all the people screaming no government. Well, here's a part of the problem here. You have a system that is set up within capitalism where they have to The government has to protect the investors by saying, you better be doing everything you can to make money. And if you don't, like, we'll come after you.
Yeah.
I don't even know how that works, but you get the point, right? Versus that then leads these companies to innovate away off the things that made them great.
Yes. Off the founding principles, ultimately. Which, bringing back Clubhouse, that's the beautiful thing about Clubhouse. It's so fucking simple to use. And
Please don't fuck it up.
That's why you see.
Don't fuck it up.
Yeah, seriously, please. If you're listening,
Rohan, Paul,
I love you guys, but
please
don't fuck it up.
Just don't do anything. Move to a beach in Nepal. Just leave it. Go ahead.
But that's why you see, it could be a threat to them in the long term. But who are majority of the users on Clubhouse? The older generation.
I haven't even paid attention to that yet, really.
Yeah. Think about the VCs, right? There's very little young VCs, even though it's a new theme that you're an investor at 21 years old somehow. But a lot of the VCs on there, which ultimately that's what grew Clubhouse, was the startup community. That's where they first launched. That's what blew them up and gave them so much traction, because they had these high profile people under that, and it was the hype. They just wanted to get involved. People wanted to be in the room in those conversations. But it's the older generation, and why? Because it's so fucking simple to use.
Click the room. Oh, I'm in. Oh, that guy's lighting up. Yeah, he's the one talking right now.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, there's a mute button there? I watched an older lady figure that out one time. Like, I was watching her picture in the room, and I'm like, inside of 2 minutes, she's going to figure out there's a mute button.
Yep.
And what do you know? Like, people start going off mute, back on mute. She's still lighting up, walking around, and then boop, there goes the mute button. And she had just said she had just joined the app. And I'm like, there it is.
Yeah.
Like, they just get it.
In 5 minutes. Now, anyone can figure it out.
Clubhouse, if you're listening, I know you are. If you're listening, can we shorten the characters? More simplicity. Can we shorten the characters in the bios?
Oh, yeah.
Because we have the LinkedIn mafia coming in and writing their whole fucking resume on there about everything they ever did, including the janitorial service, to make themselves sound important, with emojis and everything. That's like a dissertation of 2,000 words, and I don't fucking read any of them.
No.
Let's shorten that. Anyway, other than that, it's all right in front of you. And I don't even like the color of it, right?
Yeah, no,
like that brown. But do I care? No, because they know I'm not going to care, because it's like, how easily can I get from point A to point B? All right, bet, cool.
Yeah, I've been in and out of a room.
I'll get used to it.
Yep.
And then maybe they'll change the color one time, and I'll be like, oh, that's better. You know, it's the hardest thing, because you like, here's an example. I hate love having to post like Instagram promos for this. Because I have a lot of fun as like an artist making the borders and then making them for other people and putting cool PNGs in there. You know, I did one where I had a bookie in here and I put like a baseball bat over like a ball of cash. It's fun.
Yeah.
I don't like looking at that though.
Yeah. Okay.
I like a feed that just shows up and has the video. We've created a user base though that on that specific platform, not YouTube, not like this on YouTube, on that platform. They need to have something catch their eye just to stop to actually engage with the video. And so they need something that they can immediately get an idea of what the video is to make that decision to say, I'm going to spend 10 seconds on this, which is a lot to ask of someone, right? So even when I'm doing something where it's like, I know I have to, I hate it, because I just wish it would be like, boom, white paper right in front of me. Like, they didn't make the iPhone and have 12 physical buttons or, 12 different spaces on the screen. It was one infinity screen. Here we are 14 years later, everyone's using it.
Yeah, it's almost the same.
Yeah, it's the interesting thing is because if you're a big Steve Jobs fan, you know that where design meets tech is where the genius is.
Yeah, exactly. And to their credit, I don't know if you know this, but they just became the world's leading seller in smartphones. That's something Steve Jobs always wanted to strive for, taking over Samsung. He did it. Not him, but you know what I mean. The company
he did.
But he did it.
Well, on that specifically, though, my thing about Apple is, and this is coming right back to Monopolies' point, they have so much fucking money.
Yeah.
They can buy, 100 countries.
In cash.
Straight up. Like, straight cash, homie.
Yeah.
And they have the staying power to be able to, and they've done this, to use said money to buy ideas. And this applies to other companies too, but I'm just using them as the example. So if they get a major competitor or someone they see is going to be a major competitor, like Google did with DeepMind, they just buy them early. They identify it and they bring them in. Oh, now you're on the team. They give them a big check, and it's just the law of math and humans. It's not the fault of the people they buy. They just do. That has hidden the fact to me that Apple has not really innovated since Steve Jobs died.
I agree.
Yeah, go off.
I agree 100%. They lost that. You know, it's almost like, which Tim Cook, he's an amazing guy. I truly do love a lot of the things that he does. And
great businessman.
Yeah, great businessman. And even what he's doing for privacy these days. Like,
huge.
Apple is the only company, to an extent, but the only tech company that I truly am okay with. Because even from a monopolistic standpoint, at least they're utilizing the companies they absorb for a better purpose.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yes.
And it's just like you lost that creative genius. You lost the guy who was crazy in a sense. I feel like they're starting to gain too much order, and you need to have that startup mentality where things are breaking left and right because they're working.
And that's the bridge that gets crossed in every company.
Yes.
Like there's a day.
Yes.
I don't know if you feel it. I've never been in that situation. I would probably miss it too because it's happened to every single company ever.
Yes.
There's
Besides
a day,
Tesla.
There's another one we'll come to. There's a day though where you go from being the Facebook that was in the garage to like the Facebook that paid some dude in stock to have the mural and then forgot about it. You know, like there's and then it becomes so big. I had in buddy of mine, Alex Horowitz, who's the chief of staff at 8 Sleep.
Okay.
Which is, if you haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, it's a fitness app, right? Well, for sleep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they make the bed. And then it's an artificial intelligence mattress.
Okay.
And so completely unrelated to him coming on the podcast, like 2 weeks later, they just started to explode.
Yeah.
And hearing him talk about his shift, like he is so tactical. He learns everything about everything and then makes decisions based on that. And he does it pretty quick. He was coming from Goldman Sachs. He did very well at Goldman Sachs. He did a really good job and he had come up through the ranks. And so he made the decision for reasons, you know, all kinds of reasons, that he wanted to get out of that world and he wanted to get to where the innovation was, which partially had to do with the fact that it was a bank and, you know, I understand that. Yeah. You're told what the fuck is, right? And what's not. You're told every reason something can't happen and not why something can. But when he was looking out and learning everything about the venture world and about the startup world, he talked about it openly on the podcast, and it is a thought in the community that, like, if you go to work for a Facebook now, if you go to work for a YouTube or something like that, it's generally, like, if you're really talented, it's someone who's been around the block and, like, they're tired and they want to just go somewhere where they got great resources, they can build some cool shit, but they're not really going to push the envelope. It's like to go get their big sunset package and be able to do what they're good at. Yeah. Whereas the startup culture is, how are we going to break as much shit as possible and maybe break ourselves along the way?
Definitely.
Do you agree with that whole assessment?
Absolutely.
As far as like who works at those types of companies?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what breeds creativity in a startup perspective, right? You need to be able to have the freedom, to a sense, to try a bunch of different things. Maybe one will stick, maybe one doesn't. And in that case, you keep trying things that work and you're constantly being creative. You're constantly innovating. You're constantly just striving to do something new. That's what ultimately I think is the driving factor in them, is just we want to build something new and we want to have an impact. And we'll do honestly whatever it takes to get there.
Now, how old are you now?
26.
Okay. So you're young as fuck. When did you get, and that's a compliment.
Thanks.
When did you get into this? Like, was this stuff that you were thinking about when you were growing up? Like, oh, I see this great technology. I want to do shit like that, but do it my own way. Or did you kind of fall into it?
Honestly, no. I didn't think about that stuff at all until I got into college. And then I speak a lot about it because I dropped out of college, but I learned a lot.
Okay. Where'd you go to college?
So I went originally to Rider University and I played baseball there. And then I got hurt, so I transferred to Rowan University.
And you dropped out of college?
Yes. I had a semester left.
And you dropped out with a semester left?
Yeah. To build a startup.
Okay. So how did that... So you were an athlete in college.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, you fell into something.
Yeah, I got into physics, honestly. So that's why I'm kind of, hate on college to an extent, because now I feel like there's enough resources out there that you can supplement a college education. But the experiences that I learned in there were definitely invaluable, because I got exposed to things that I never got exposed to before. So I was studying accounting when I was doing baseball. I was, I never was exposed to the science aspect and just thinking outside the box. And physics forced me to do that, because you're in a room of almost the brightest minds. They talk about thinking outside the box. Hop in a room full of physicists. I mean, you see it from Eric Weinstein. Those are deep intellectual people. They ask questions that no one is used to. They ask the hard questions that no one wants to answer, because that's the only way you can grow and you can learn new things from.
Provided they're not bought and sold.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
Always.
Just got to say that.
Yeah, definitely.
You said it yourself earlier.
Yeah. So that's kind of what got me into the technology side of things, because I was doing a little bit of programming in C++ and C#. So I got a sense of the programming languages and different applications. And then I just started thinking of just different use cases of how many, because we're just doing modeling essentially and crunching numbers with the programming languages. So then I kind of got exposed to that and got into the whole app situation and startups. And the idea that I had initially was because of my sports background. So then I was just like, fuck it, I'm going all in.
So what was the initial idea?
So it was...
Scratching an itch.
Yeah, essentially a LinkedIn for recruiting, which at the time no one was doing. If you look now in the space, it seems like every recruiting company is just a spinoff of LinkedIn. But, I learned a fuck ton of lessons. We raised just shy of $50,000 to get things going. Built a team of 5 people. At a time, it was 7. And I just learned so many fucking lessons, man, because the biggest teacher in life is failure. That's the only way to actually grow on your own, too.
Did you drop out to start this? Is that
Yeah.
what you were saying? Okay, so you had the idea, you had formulated it, and you're like, all right, I'm going to go do this full time.
Right. Now, I wasn't an asshole about it. I did a little research. I talked to coaches that I still had in my network. I talked to players and athletes and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I made sure it was a viable decision to do. And I just, in my situation, I throw myself into things, even if I don't know much about it, because I think experience is the best teacher. So I got into that. Even the same thing with physics. I just threw myself into it. I didn't even take a math in my senior year of high school. But then physics is basically a math degree. You get a minor just for graduating in physics. So I like to throw myself in things like that. And I just said, fuck it, I'm going all in. I've talked to enough people where I think it's a big opportunity for me. And this is something that I could have an impact in, not only just from growing a business, but also impacting people, because I'm big on giving back. I help other people almost to a fault, where I'll put them above myself. And I saw a big opportunity in helping underprivileged kids in high school who don't, because it's become a pay-to-play industry. If you don't have the means to spend thousands of dollars on equipment, travel teams, trainers, the odds are you're not going to college for it. So my goal was to essentially level the playing field there.
Now, this is important. People don't talk about this, but this is a very, very good point, because you do. Anytime someone has a lot more resources behind them than a competitor, they have a huge advantage. But this is like with kids, it's not in their control. Like if their dad can pay for it or not, right? So your platform, though, how did it solve for that? What was the idea to solve for that specifically? Because it's not like you were giving out free equipment where they didn't have it.
Yeah.
Like what was the end all, I guess, like punchline of it?
It was basically matchmaking you with college coaches based on your experience and your attributes at the end of the day. So like, I'll use baseball as an example. If you're throwing 85 miles an hour, odds are you're probably not going to play at a high level D1 school. So you can filter that out and kind of, just based on those attributes, matchmake a lot better. But then a big driving force behind it was I didn't want to charge the kids a dime. I did not want to make money off any kid, because at the end of the day, coaches are the ones who get paid to recruit. So why should you be nickel and diming kids, even though at the end of the day it's coming from their parents? But like we said, trying to level the playing field here.
Sure. Yeah, you don't know what the parents' means are.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And then you see, like, we're close to Camden, for example, right? So you see a hell of a lot of good athletes come out of Camden. Not all of them have the means to go to the next level because they're not getting that exposure. I mean, now it's getting there because we're starting to see, the Baller TVs of the world, they're doing overtime. They're doing a good job of showcasing athletes. But again, they're kind of like only the cream of the crop guys. What about the rest of them?
Yeah, like how do you get a kid who could get a great opportunity to play at a D3 school?
Yes.
Right? So and I don't want to say like trim the edges here, but your kids who could use athletics as a jumping point to their entire life and not necessarily be like pro material or going to be pro material, but they can go play it for a smaller school that therefore then gets them access to the education.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get it for them.
Even in my situation, I got a scholarship to play in college, and just the shit you do alone in the background, just like the work ethic you develop and the mentality that you have, you're tough as nails. I went to Rider University.
And you played baseball, right?
Shout out Barry Davis. Love the guy. He's our head coach.
You played baseball there?
Correct. Yeah. Played baseball. He had us up at 4:30 in the morning doing Indian runs around campus. But you had to battle through that. You had to wake up at 3:30, make sure you got breakfast, enough liquids in you. So now you're waking up super early on top of going to sleep at midnight because you had schoolwork to do. These are just qualities that you can't teach. You have to experience that. And I think if everyone had just a better opportunity to go through that situation, honestly, the world could be a better place. But it's giving that opportunity to these kids at the end of the day.
Yeah, they get more out. They get a lot more work out of it, but
yes.
They get that. They get the chance to even have the chance. My best friends in college were D1 football players, right? So I saw that up close. I wouldn't have understood that. I didn't understand that before college. I see it in college, and that's why I support these kids getting paid because of revenue, dude. It is a 60 to 70 hour a week job.
Yeah.
Forget the fact. Yeah. Forget the fact.
Not including games.
Not including games. But I'm talking off season. These guys when they were in spring practice. I mean, it's like film study this, one a day that, lift that. It's like between going there, working your ass off, studying all this stuff. Then you have the school side where you have to get your work done.
Yeah, and you're missing classes majority of the time because you're away traveling.
Which, even though we joke about it all the time, there's a lot of classes you can't do that with.
No.
You can't be missing 2 out of 3 classes a week and expect to do well in it.
Yeah.
And then you also, you're in college, you want to have a little bit of fun. I was just always amazed at how they found the time. And the only way they did is minus, some genetics of just being total savages. They could manage their time better than anyone else. And they probably, I know a couple of them would have never gotten that skill.
Right.
If they hadn't been forced to do it.
Exactly. And those things that you learn in the mentality, that grind, that's what led me that's what made the startup space so attractive to me. It was because it's the closest industry without being in professional sports, which I knew I wasn't going to get there. I had 3 shoulder surgeries, so I was never going to be anything like that.
What'd you do?
I tore my labrum.
Join the club, bro.
Yeah, 3 times.
Join the club, bro.
That's what made me stop. I tore
I'm
it again.
a 2-time loser.
All right. Well, welcome. It's nice to have you. Where was I going with that?
Sorry. I had to throw that in.
No, we're boys there.
Is the closest thing to athletics, you were saying, the startup community.
Yes, because it's the only thing where you have to be so specific about your time management. You have to be willing to put in the extra hours to get there and do the things that you want to do. You have to be open to those things, and at the end of the day, you have to be a team player too, because you can't do it alone.
No, you can't. That's a good point. I'm hearing a lot of nuance though here, which I really like. And it's on a hot button issue. So we'll go down this rabbit hole. You are a guy who dropped out of college and you have some thoughts around that because you wanted to go get experience and you had a big opportunity, especially scratching an itch to go do this. Mm-hmm. But you also appreciated the experiences that, to use your words, you got there that you wouldn't have gotten. And you also appreciate with the thing you literally went to build, the idea of giving other kids who maybe wouldn't get access to that kind of platform, like a collegiate platform, to get access there and get an education. So I'm not hearing a guy who comes out and says, because there's 2 schools here. People are like, you must go to college. It's ridiculous. Anyone would say otherwise.
The extreme point of view again.
Right? It all comes, culture's culture.
Always, yep.
Or there's the view like, yo, fuck that, drop out. And you technically did drop out with a semester left, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. But you're not coming at it from everyone should do it like that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely not, because you can supplement majority of the learnings, right? Like even the textbooks. they're in a sense legacy textbooks. They were made 10, 15, 20 years ago. So they're not, a lot of them aren't even current up to date. Where if you hop on YouTube, you take a course on Udemy, Coursera, any of those like that, you're getting real world knowledge that is from today, not yesterday.
Yep.
But you can't trade it for the experience, right? If you don't go to college, you're going to miss out on the friendships, right? Just the stupid shit that you do with your boys in school. You're going to miss that opportunity because it's a learning lesson. You do a lot of dumb shit, which make a lot of mistakes. I'm not going to mention what mistakes I made in that realm. But
we mention everything here. Get ready to fess up, boy.
But it's invaluable experiences. You need to be surrounded with people, because if you leave, if you don't go to school and you join the workforce, 9 times out of 10 you're probably going to be surrounded with older people not your age, and you need to feel that sense of community because you need to be able to relate at the end of the day.
Yes.
You need to be able to have a conversation with someone and say, "Oh shit, bro, I'm going through the same thing," and that's. If you're
emotional intelligence.
Yes, and if you're talking to older people, you're just going to get, this is what I did back in the day. No, I want to know what you're going through right now. How can you help me right now? And friends are great for that. And then I was blessed with really great teachers, I would say, that they didn't make me follow the status quo. They made me ask the tough questions that no one wants to ask. And that brought out an animal in me. And that I can attest my college coach to that too. He probably hates that I said I dropped out, but he still is a continual learner. The guy's like 50 years old. He gets a master's every couple of weeks, but that's a testament to him.
He's your coach.
He was my coach, but yeah. He's got a doctorate. He's got a master's. He's got everything. But he kind of made me want to continue to learn and grow as a person, not just in a sports aspect, because I saw him, when we had the Indian runs at 4:30 in the morning, we would walk in the gym. He's on the treadmill already for an hour reading a book while he's on the treadmill waiting for us to do an Indian run at 4:30 in the morning.
That's walking the talk. I like that.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yes, he's practicing what he preaches at the end of the day.
There's a lot of coaches that don't do that.
No, exactly. But also, granted, he was young enough to be able to still do those things.
Sure.
But yeah, I love the guy. He taught me so many different lessons, and that's where you can't replace that. You can't get that anywhere else.
Now, you had the camaraderie of sports, the life skills it taught you. You talk about the experience, which anyone can relate to in college, of like putting yourself in interesting situations, making friends, being in that community. I buy all that.
It's also resourcefulness too. Like,
what do you mean?
So say you have 3 exams in one day. Oh shit, I crushed studying 2 of them, but the one I forgot about. So let me link up with the boys in the caf and let's figure out how to get through this together. That makes you scrappy. Those are tools that you need even in the startup space, because things change every fucking day. You need to be ready to adapt. You need to be just ready to collaborate and just be ready to figure it out any way you have to.
Now, there are people who are members of the Wall Street Bets Reddit community that would argue that you could get the same thing on Reddit of resourcefulness. I had to say it. No, I know what you mean. It's that personal, it's a personal touch, which you can't get on the internet like that. I understand that. But there's an argument that a lot of people bring up where they'll say, oh, I went to college because I was supposed to go to college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just did a major, and then the major they felt like had no applicability. But it seems like you had an interest in physics and you knew you were going to be interested in that, and then you were able to grow out of that. So you, at least at the end of the day, whether you knew it or not, you landed in a spot where it's like, oh, yeah, that made sense for me.
So I didn't know what I was going to do. Okay. I initially studied accounting, and then when I transferred, I got into biology, and then I was just like, what am I doing? And then luckily I took a calculus course, and I had a professor who he was a math guy, and he was very big into like hiking and going into nature and experiencing the stars, and he would always talk about the stars, and every time he would do a math equation, he would talk about the stars. And it just so happened at the time I was going on a hike with my boy to Maine, and just seeing the fucking stars in Maine, dude, it's enough to blow your mind. Like, we were on a mountain, the electric shut off at 8 o'clock every night, no telephone, no anything. So it was just complete blackness on the mountain. And it was the start of the Appalachian Trail. So it was an enormous mountain. Dude, you could see the whole Milky Way. It was amazing. And then I got back to school and got back to classes. And I told him I was going on this hike, and it was the first week of school. He said, dude, go. I don't care if you're going to miss class. It would be an amazing experience. And just that alone, it gave me a different perspective of him. So I was way more open to like his teachings and getting into that side of things. And then he would always mention physics and astronomy. And after the experience I just had, I was like, fuck, dude, maybe this is it for me. And switched my major the next week.
And again, you get a great teacher in that case. Not just someone who like knows the stuff, but is invested, understands, is open-minded.
Not just, he doesn't have the horse blinders on. He was open to, you know, getting a well-rounded experience as a young kid.
And there are a lot of professors like that.
Yes.
We have to remember that.
Yes.
There are a lot.
Yes.
There are also a lot who aren't like that.
Correct, which that hurts.
And that's the luck of the draw with some people. It's amazing the different viewpoints, I mean, from all over the place, I get from people in college. They're across the spectrum, and they have like, it's not A or B. It's A or B in the end, like fuck it or love it, right? But there's different ways they got there. You know, some people are talking about, well, this professor specifically, or that one too, or this subject matter, or this thing that came out of that. You have a bunch of these things, by the way. So you like really hit the jackpot here.
I did. I was lucky.
I like that because you're not a guy who comes out here and said, I dropped out. Fuck it. What are you going to do? Like that's it. You're looking at it like, hey, this is a part of the process here. And the process got me to this point. It got me to be able to start something.
Yeah, I had to do what I got to do because honestly, if I didn't drop out, I'd probably be, you know, a researcher somewhere doing something in physics.
You'd be an accountant.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Yeah, but if I didn't drop out, that's what I would be doing. I would be, you know, I'd have a degree in physics, a minor in astrophysics, and a minor in math. And I'd be so deep in that space, I would have never got into startups. And I wouldn't change anything.
Could you, like, do you ever sit back and think about, with all the crazy shit you're doing right now and the technology you get to see on a day-to-day basis, which I'm very jealous of, do you ever sit back and think, like, damn, I could be filing a fucking 1099 for some jerk off who's asking me about my $100 fee right now?
Yeah, all the time. It's just, that's what I love so much about the startup space. You know, it's, people get caught in the routine of things, and you're waking up at 8 o'clock, going to the job and doing, you have 6 things that you have to do every single day, and then you clock out at 4. I don't have that. I wake up and I got to figure out what I'm doing for the day. I have a bunch of things that I need to do, but okay, what time is he? He's 12 hours behind me. What time do I have to link with him?
Oh yeah, you got the whole damn.
Yeah. So, but it's, I love it because it's something new every day. I never get caught in that routine. I could have, you know, 8 o'clock to 12 p.m. to myself, and then the next day I have to wake up at 6 o'clock to hop on a call at 7 because it's the 12-hour time difference. So I get to, you know, it's just dynamic, and that's what I love about it. That's honestly what intrigued me so much about physics, was that every time you get deeper into a subject, you stumble across something that changes your entire perspective.
Yeah. And that, now you're introducing another thing we probably won't even get to that, but I'm not even going to go there. I have to ask about the pathway here, though, because you went and you hinted at it already, but I'm not really sure how this ended. We didn't have a chance to talk about that. You did this project. You went to create this quote unquote LinkedIn for the recruiting world to kind of level the playing field. And this is what, like 2015, 2016?
Yeah, 4 years ago. So yeah, 2016,
2017.
Yeah, it was about 4.5. So yeah, 2016, 2017.
But this is not obviously what you're involved in now. So at some point this ended.
Yes.
What happened there? You said you learned a lot of lessons and that there was a little bit of failure. What went on there?
So I learned that not everyone works as hard as I do, and you're going to come across people who don't have that work ethic, and they're not going to be just motivated to, you know, put in the extra hours, stay up till 1, 2, 3 in the morning just to get something you need done for the next day. Granted, so we basically, my partner and I, he was my technical co-founder. He had a different idea of the direction that he wanted to go with the platform, and I had something else. And then it also turned into, he wasn't really doing as much work as like we needed to be at the time, because, you know, and I still love the guy. I talk to him still till this day. No bad blood there at all. He was a genius guy. Like I really lucked out with him initially.
That's great though.
Yeah.
You don't hear that very often. This is someone that a company, your baby ended, right? And that's how you're looking at it at the time, even if you shouldn't have. That's how you're looking at it. And yet you can have a good relationship with that guy.
Yeah,
that's
because
awesome.
Everyone has different walks of life, so you got to appreciate where they're coming from. The guy lives in Silicon Valley. He works for a top Fortune 500 engineering company. fresh out of college, he was making $150,000 a year. So for him even to be willing to take that risk and take that leap with me.
Oh, he did that at the time.
Oh yeah, I took him away from that job.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, he was a genius. He helped program the Mars rover. Like, he did a bunch of things, man. He's a very bright kid. And yeah, so we just ultimately, he didn't have the time that we thought he was going to have. And then he wanted to take the platform a different direction than I did. So we just kind of had to, we were a year and a half into it. I didn't take a paycheck the entire time. All the funding we raised went directly into the company.
It was lean too.
Yeah,
I mean, 50,000 isn't a lot of money.
No,
you
very
can go
lean,
through that
very
very
lean.
fast.
Luckily, because he had that job that made him secure, so he didn't need that funding. And then, to be honest, I just took advantage of the situation of, I was home with my parents still, so I had the opportunity to not take a paycheck, even though obviously more money is good. You need money to do things.
Yeah.
But I had to sacrifice. I had to stay in. If you talk to my friends, there was a period where I really didn't talk to anyone. They didn't see me in like a year because I would never go out. But those are things I needed to do because all the money went back into the company.
Did they understand?
I'd say one of them did.
That's more than most people can say.
Yeah. They were supportive to an extent. But it's just, if you're not in the startup space, man, it's hard to understand. It really is. Just because of the things you deal with, how many different hats you have to wear. Like, you're not just trying to raise money for the business. You're trying to come up with a business plan, how you're going to monetize. And then even when you think you have a monetization strategy, you probably don't, because you need to see how the users interact and how you can actually implement a monetization strategy. Because as we've seen with other companies, if you implement it the wrong way, you're going to fail. You're doing marketing. In my case, I basically designed our UI UX. So I was heavily involved in the development of the front end of the product. Yeah, you just have to wear a lot of hats, and not everyone understands that. And even the mental side of things, man, it takes a toll on you.
It's not their fault, right?
No.
In the sense that I used to have a great opportunity when, I didn't do anything on my own per se, but my last job gave me access to know a lot of entrepreneurs, whether it be in tech or in other things.
Yeah.
And I basically had a front row seat to learn about these guys. And I had to build business too, but I did work for a company, right? I had that backstop. I had that salary, whatever. And these guys used to say to me, they're like, when you go to do this, people don't understand. Even the closest people to you. And after, I always just assumed, and I try to do this all the time, that like I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So I would never say like, yeah, man, I get it. I'd be like, yeah, I probably don't understand either.
Yeah.
But then you spend enough time around these guys, and then you see some situation where shit goes bad, and you have a front row seat, and then they say it. After a while, there's a part of you that does get it, even if you're not in it.
Right.
I'm just speaking from my own experience.
Yeah, right.
But then you do it. And that last part, that second half kicks in, and you're like, oh, I get it. Because your friends don't mean anything bad. Your family doesn't mean anything bad. They just want they legit, if they actually like care about you, they want what's best for you, right? So they're like, oh, come on, you've been working hard. You can take tonight off.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? You got to come to the bar. You need some balance in your life.
Exactly.
You need some balance in your life.
Exactly.
And like, look, it'll be there. It'll be there on Monday. And the thing is, time, money, both tied together along with opportunity. And when you are running your own thing, and I'm getting this vibe from you hard, it's you or no one's going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It has to be that way, though, to an extent. And circling back to the friend situation, in their defense, it was probably, my fault as well, because I never communicated these things, because at the time I was throwing myself into a new space. I didn't know what I was getting into at the time. I didn't know the effort it was going to take out of me. I didn't know all the different things I was going to have to do. I didn't know I was going to have to sacrifice all this stuff. But, back to the upbringing and then sports and all that stuff, I was okay with sacrificing all that stuff. But, if you're not communicating that with other people, they're not going to, telepathy, sadly, is not a thing yet. So no one's going to know what you're thinking.
Give it a couple years.
Yeah. Neuralink.
Yeah, give it a couple years. No, dude, I love hearing that from guys who have been in there, because now I also get it, and I can say that. And it's why when I see people, whatever it is, when they deliver on a great idea and they didn't just win the lottery overnight and come up with something.
Yeah, which everyone thinks is what happens.
Exactly. Like even the Clubhouse guys. And I don't know much about them yet. But
I know a little bit of their backstory, but like, yeah.
All right, so what do you know? You probably know more.
Paul Davidson, he's been in social specifically for many years now. He initially built an app that was kind of like a location meetup app. He was always encouraging real conversations and real connection between people. So it was basically, if we're connected on the app and you and I go to, say, a DaBaby concert, right? And we're both there. Shout out DaBaby. Yeah. You can go on the app and we can see that we're both at the concert together, so let's meet up. Like, it was location based in that aspect. Ended up selling to Pinterest for X amount of money. I don't think it was disclosed the last time I checked. But then he moved on to another social app. And then it was basically real-time streaming for podcasts. So it was always about the audio. And then I'm not sure if that took off or not, but that ultimately led to Clubhouse.
So this all makes the point. It makes it better than I would have been able to make it. This entire vortex to get to Clubhouse, because people might say with Clubhouse, oh my God, they literally I think they designed it in like January.
Yeah.
And they got the money from Andreessen Horowitz, $10 million in March. So it's like, oh, well, they caught it right away.
Yeah.
What about all the companies it took to get there? What about before that first fucking company that we probably have never heard of?
Yep.
Maybe nothing ever even came of it, right? But you got a little payday out of it. Mm-hmm. Think about all the years that may have gone into building that. All the years eating fucking ramen. Exactly. Eating ramen noodles and working at his mom's kitchen table and building it because that was the idea. And even if people couldn't see it, like it was going to work and there was going to be something that was going to get him to the next thing and be able to get him there. This is what happens. It is not, you don't just make a fucking TikTok and suddenly become Dogface 208. That's not how it works. No. Like those are even with that stuff, it's the exception to the rule.
Yep.
And like nothing against, like that guy's great. Yeah. It's awesome. And like when people get that, the yodeler kid in the Walmart who now will never have to go to school the rest of his life if he doesn't want to, great.
Yep.
You cannot count on that.
No.
So you have to build.
Yeah, definitely.
And you get that.
You even see it with Elon Musk. Like, I don't understand how people can hate on the guy the way that he gets hate. Like, they just say he's an overnight millionaire and he's just pushing the edge. Like, you've got to be kidding me. He's failed companies. He got kicked out of 2 of companies that he built. That, it took a fuck ton of work for him to get to where he is. And they think Tesla was an overnight success. That company's almost 20 years old now. It took 20 years for them to get to where they are today.
Fen, you and me talked about it, but the Christmas Eve 2008 story.
Yeah.
You heard that, I assume.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He put his entire net worth on the line.
That guy, think about the balls. Not just the balls, the belief.
That's the thing, is that he has such strong beliefs, and he really does just, I mean, this is all saying without knowing the guy, but just, he really does want to do whatever he can to help humanity.
Well, in college, he sat in his dorm, as he puts it, because I was totally doing this when I was 20 years old, and said, okay, what are the 5 ways in which I believe I can use my life's work to foster the future of humanity? And he sits in there, and of course, we were all asking that, right?
Yeah,
we're sitting there, I'm passing the blunt to somebody going, hey, how can I help out fucking humanity?
Yeah.
I can't even figure out where I'm getting lunch that day, and this fucking guy's sitting in a dorm going, how can I foster the future of humanity? Yep. Okay, artificial intelligence, sustainability, interplanetary connectivity. Starts going through all these things, and he's like, if I'm lucky, I will get to 3 in my career.
Yeah.
And this is what my life is for.
Yep.
Within 20 years, he was at all 5, and he doesn't stop. And we talk about these dudes who operate in the back room earlier, right? All these elitists and whatever. Yeah. This fucking guy just tweets what's on his mind.
That's why I love him.
He sits on a conference call. Do you know he gets sued in Delaware every week because they're incorporated in Delaware? Right. My dad tells me he gets sued in Delaware like every week. He don't give a fuck.
No.
Like then the last lawsuit pays for this lawsuit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, like keep suing me. It's very, very hard to hate on a guy who has nothing to lose.
No, exactly. And like you said, Christmas 2008, he had everything to lose, and he still put his neck out there.
His company, for background on that, he had his main two were Tesla and SpaceX at the time, which do two separate things.
Yep.
And he had used all his PayPal money when he sold PayPal. And he was down, I think he said he was down to the last $20 million or something. He had to A, close a financing round for like a bridge loan from VCs who were going to take like a little stake in return. And B, had to decide to put the rest of his money into a company. And so the way he looked at it, world's falling apart, is like, he said, okay, if I take all the money and put it in one and let the other die, I'm going to make it. It's like, nothing's guaranteed, but it's like, we're going to be all right.
Yeah.
If I take it and split it between the two, though, there's a very good chance both die.
Yep.
And he believed in it so much that he said, then I guess they'll have to die.
Yep.
And anyone who would do that, and then anyone who just like on a whim would go out and help out like he did in coronavirus at the front for California and New York, and then make a stand and say when this was bullshit before any of us thought that way or had the balls to, and then also say like, you know what, I'm a billionaire and people are really coming at people who just use ridiculous shit with their money. Hey, I think I'll sell every house I have. This is not normal.
No.
Like if I were betting on the aliens, Trump and Musk for very different reasons. Very different reasons, I might add.
Yeah.
But like, he's a good alien. It's like, all right, I fuck with that guy.
Yeah.
He just doesn't, you're right. It is, if you hate on that guy, you have some sort of skin in the game.
Yeah, you have to, because he ultimately just, people hate on SpaceX for trying to get to Mars, and they say, why are you so focused on colonizing another planet? They forget about Tesla. He's literally trying to save Earth and colonize another planet. He just wants to have, hope for civilization, that we can be a multiplanetary species, while conserving Earth for as long as we fucking can, because it's a beautiful planet. And it's as far as we know, a dime a dozen. I mean, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of other planets that we assume to be habitable, like Earth. But at the end of the day, we don't know because we can't get there yet. So he does want to save this planet as much as he can with solar and all the things that he's doing there. But then also he wants to give hope to people that there's a bright future to look to, where we can have a future like the Jetsons, which I think everyone, if you don't think that was something amazing, then I question who you are, because seeing that shit is just, it's amazing. And that's all he's trying to do.
Yet again, we're coming back, though, with this answer. With Elon, it's once again the argument of the individual and the institution, which we at least touched on earlier. Because he technically, from the outside, you look at it and say, well, fuck, that guy's got 5 different tech companies. He's the institution. He's the big swinging dick. Like, he's the guy, he's with the Zuckerberg, the Bezos, and all them. But he's a rogue individual. And you're already painting the picture of it, but you're talking about a guy who just, he cannot be swayed to do something that is outside the purview of what his goals for his life's meaning are. And that sounds like a really deep mesh of words, but that's what he's about. He is a slave to, these are the things I wanted to accomplish, like the things we were talking about in his dorm room, and that's it.
Yeah, he just doesn't, he abides by his own laws, essentially, because he has a goal that he has to reach, and he'll do whatever he can to get there. And at the end of the day, he can't be controlled. Like, you can even look at it from the politics perspective. Tulsi Gabbard, why did she not go as far as she could have? It's because she can't be controlled. She doesn't even, she's been open about it, just like funding that people wanted to throw at her during her campaign. She didn't take it because she knew she would have had to answer to someone, and she didn't want to. She wanted to stick by her morals and things that she wanted to accomplish. So it's all about that. At the end of the day, it seems like who funds you, right? But that's the beautiful thing about Elon. He doesn't care, because he'll do whatever he can to accomplish his goal. That's why I see a sticker of him smoking pot on Joe Rogan.
Oh, there's 2.
There's
a picture right there.
What other CEO of 2 enormous companies would you expect to do that? None, because he doesn't give a fuck. He will do whatever he needs to do, and he doesn't care.
Now, some people say that makes him crazy, or it makes him, insert whatever word to describe somebody where you want to take him down here. But that's the beauty of it. where there's great creativity and where there's people who are doing things differently, like everyone in Silicon Valley, oh, we want to be different. Well, unless you think differently.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
This guy does.
Yep.
And whether it's right, the argument isn't like, is he right or wrong about everything? I happen to think a lot of things he says, it's like, wow, yeah, it's pretty spot on.
Yep.
I'm sure I'll go find some things I know I have in the past where it's like, yeah, I think he missed on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Doesn't matter.
It shows he's human.
He's human. He's being honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Tulsi point, I love that. Did you listen to her on JRE?
Yeah, I listened to the first one too, and honestly, during her whole campaign, I was kind of just following her because I really enjoyed how she was so outspoken about things like that.
I agree. I was just talking about this with Brady on a podcast, but I never get to listen to JRE anymore. But now I've listened to like 4 in the last 2 months, I think. And the last 2 I listened to like back to back. I'd done like an hour of the Tulsi thing, and I was like, oh my God. And then he had Lex Friedman on, who I'd loved him since day one on his pod.
Big Lex guy.
Right?
Yeah. And
with the Tulsi one, though, because Lex is like a radical centrist too. I love listening to him. But with Tulsi, she was in the game.
Yeah.
You know, she was in the middle of it. And there were some things where I think she was almost describing like these events that happen as if we were all going to be shocked.
Yeah.
And we weren't. But she was actually giving the play-by-play from the inside of how it went down and saying, yeah, I didn't like that. And mind you, this lady was I think like the assistant head of the DNC at one point.
Yes.
She's been in the middle of it.
Yep.
And so to hear that type of perspective and how she just kind of kept her campaign going even when she was getting nuked by all sides, you know, she at least stood for something even when she knew she couldn't win. It was more or less like, well, I want to be able to point to something to say like these ideas were on the table, and then I'll leave Congress and actually be able to talk about it in the private sector and see if people take up that mantle. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The most impactful thing I think that she could have said, and probably people just discarded and it didn't even register in their head, was that when he asked her like something about being comfortable in Washington, and she straight up said, I only stayed in Washington maybe a couple times a month, but I was always made it a point to get back to Hawaii because I never wanted to feel comfortable in the environment of Washington because they are so disconnected to actual reality that she wanted to be with her people. She wanted to see what they were going through every day, the struggles, the good things. She wanted to be there and not get involved in that own world that Washington is.
And for her to not take some of the things that happened to her personally, and I'm sure she did.
Yeah.
But for her to be so gracious about it on the public stage, I mean, them calling her a Russian asset and all this shit. It's like, bro, the level of stupidity that people in Washington will throw at the rest of the country and expect them to eat it is stunning. And then it's even more stunning when you realize a lot of people do. And I don't want to say like a lot of people are dumb. That's not it at all. A lot of people have lives.
Yes.
They got shit to worry about, stuff to do. They don't have time. They don't know who their assemblyman running for office is, let alone their actual congressional candidate and what they really stand for. They don't have time to hear things other than the quick like, oh yeah, that lady did that thing. Oh, she must be a Russian asset. It's not like you're stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're going about your day.
Yep.
Now the people who sit there and study all this shit and then actually believe that, all right, you're a fucking moron. And there are some people like that.
Absolutely.
Right? But we make these generalizations like, oh, everyone just must be dumb. No, those people know how to commoditize people's limited attention spans.
Yes.
And capitalize on it.
Yes. And you even see that all the way like going down to your local government. People don't actually know who they're voting for. They just know, oh, he's with that party and she's with that party. So I'm going to stick with this side and I'm just going to put them in office. And then they go and complain about the things that are happening in their community. But at the end of the day, they were the ones that didn't take the time to do any research and actually see who that person was and what they stood for. So they just vote him in an office, and now they're seeing the repercussions of that. You see it in California. Like Newsom, how does that guy even get in office?
Good-looking dude, chosen one, comes in and says, hey, let's just keep it going.
Right.
Like, that was his campaign.
And then everyone hates on it. But then again, like even before Newsom, the governor before him, I think was equally as, messed up. And
who was the governor before him?
I forget his name, but I'm pretty sure he got recalled too. And
Jerry something? Is that it? Am I thinking of the right guy?
Yeah. But it's
We'll look it up later.
You can't keep doing that. You're just following. Someone's got to step outside the box and actually do the research and take the time to actually be conscious of who you're voting in, or else nothing is going to change.
Well, when these people are making the decisions they do, well, it doesn't just have to be in coronavirus, with everything else. They're always looking at the finish line of the next vote.
Yeah.
And when I look at the leadership in Congress and Senate, you know, you see McConnell, you see Schumer, you see Pelosi. These are people that haven't had real jobs.
Yeah.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah.
But you're there for 40 years. I think McConnell's been there like 40 years.
Yeah.
Schumer's been there since like 82 or 83. Pelosi since like maybe 88, 89.
Yeah.
And I got to give them a lot of credit. They're politically genius because over that time span, they've just consistently gained more and more power. Yet the same ideas are staying in this power vacuum that then controls the other ideas and whipping up votes to figure out what to do, tit for tat type trade. And you saw it when Obama was president. You saw McConnell just automatically stop everything he went to do, regardless of whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, because it was like, oh, I stopped Obama.
Yeah.
You just saw the same thing with Trump from the other side with Schumer and Pelosi, who actually, on many accounts, if you're looking at it like, did they get that job done of just stopping shit, they did a great job.
Yeah.
You know, they did almost as good a job as Mitch did with Obama. And it's like, well, and I think Tulsi said this on that podcast, you are legislating with people's lives.
Yeah.
This is not just like, oh, well, who's going to get the most budget for this thing? It's like, well, no, what's the downstream effects of that?
Yeah.
Who's going to get hurt by not giving it to them?
And these are things no one that they don't think about. You know what? Maybe they do. That's just how corrupt they are.
That's the sad part. I agree with
Personal
you.
agenda is so important to them that they'll step on any bug that comes across their way.
I think there is some inherent evil.
Yeah.
I know there is.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
there are people who are drunk on this shit, and it's very those three in particularly because they're the longest tenured ones. It's very easy to look at them and look at look at actions. You're there that long. They've said so many things that contradict themselves just for political gain.
Yep.
They go where the wind goes. I mean, you even saw it, and it was a shame that like they threw the lady in the middle of it, but you saw it with the whole Supreme Court thing at the end there. You had every single Republican on camera saying in an election year, look me in the eyes, camera. In an election year, we will not place a justice in there.
Yeah.
They said nothing about a Senate majority and all this crap. And, you know, then Mitch McConnell puts out a statement behind a paper and says, it has been precedent since 1865. That, you know, that's probably how he would have said it, but it was written on a paper that when the Senate is controlled by a Republican or one party, we can place them, and that makes it different than 2016. No, it fucking doesn't, because you're all on camera saying that is not what makes it different.
Yeah.
But then people just go with it.
Yep.
And like, that's the Supreme Court. They'll do it with anything. They'll do it with anything, and it doesn't matter who they put in there. Same thing with the Merrick Garland guy 4 years ago.
Yeah.
He lost before he gained. It's not his fault. No. He was a political football.
Yep.
You know, Amy Coney Barrett, that's her name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I always fuck that up. She became a political football this time around, and that's for the rest of us, it's like people look at it and worry about their futures, which I don't think they should do. But it doesn't mean it's not very, very consequential. Whereas they just look at it like, yo, this is our game. Like NBA plays on a court like we play in DC.
Yeah. It's fucking crazy, man. It's just what has to happen for the change? Like that's a question I ask a lot, is like how many of these crazy things needs to happen before actually something's done about it?
Can we get crazier?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I answered that one for myself. But staying with the institution individual point, government's one of the oldest institutions there is.
Yep.
Talk about Musk as like technically a member of these institutions, but he's the individual.
Right.
That's why you don't put him in those classes with Zuck and Dorsey and those guys. It's like there's them and then like, oh yeah, Musk, because he has the ability to like think for himself. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But I see this dual like catch-22 paradox. I'm not really sure which one of the terms I should use there, but this opposite effect happening in society right now that I wanted to ask you about, where Corona definitely put the big red button on it, but you have this struggle between institution and individual that's going in two very opposite directions. On the one hand, you are seeing some of the oldest institutions get take and get and then therefore keep more power over individuals than ever before. You have governments telling people who they're allowed to breathe on. And by the way, what face covering they should wear in their own home.
Yeah.
You are locking people down. We'll talk about the restaurant industry too, because you know a lot about that. We'll get there. But they're telling everyone what they can do with their life. And what's even scarier is that there is a big segment of the country who not only is okay with that, but is advocating and pounding the table and saying you're not patriotic if you don't ask them to do that.
Yep.
Not looking at the downstream effects of this. Same types of people who were cheering when Trump gets deplatformed. You know, like, okay, they didn't like anything he tweets. Fine, agree with you. But what's the repercussions of that?
They didn't think about the downstream effect, like you said.
Right, so that's one side. The other side is, though, and this, again, pre-corona, this was happening. Corona just really put the focus on it. You have the individual fighting back to take power publicly over the institution more than ever before. Our most recent example is the one we talked about today in the world of high finance, where you have all these individuals on Reddit, on a subreddit, moving markets, doing it legally. Whether it's right or wrong, they're doing it legally.
Right.
And these hedge funds these guys are usually picking out their plots of land in Miami to buy 2 separate houses next to each other, you know, because that's going to be their third house now because Miami's the place to go. These hedge funds are losing money hand over fist, and all their very, very, very wealthy, accredited investor clients are losing money too.
Yep.
And so now because that's happening, they're like, oh my God, all these little idiot individuals, they're using our game against us and they're beating us, so we got to change the rules. But the first action of the individuals actually doing that is a prime example of the individuals going after the institution.
Yes.
You look at the entire concept of Bitcoin. I've talked about this before. You look at decentralization, which is this buzzword you and I have thrown around, but we'll talk about it more, where the whole idea is to take away where the process happens previously or happened in institutions like banks or like companies, middlemen that had to take part in the process and say, hey, anyone can get access to this. Anyone can have hope to be able to control their own data and have that personal responsibility over what their life is about, like in whatever subject matter it is. We also see individuals rising up through organization, right? So, and they even then support some institutions through it. How did Bernie Sanders fund his last 2 campaigns? Grassroots, right? Very small donations mostly.
Yep.
Right? So those are all individuals putting their piece in there and making his war chest compete with the Hillary Clinton. I'm not saying it was that big, but right?
Yep.
So all these actions are happening, and then you also have now everyone's remote. The gig economy just exploded through Corona. All the concept of going into groups and literally being among groups of people is changing, and it's more on you to say, like, how am I controlling my day? What am I getting done? And what am I working for myself? Or even if I'm working for a company, how much am I deciding what happens here? So the individual is fighting hard to go get stuff. But both truths exist, where the institutions have taken power over the freedom of people, but people are taking the power over the freedom of the things they're allowed to do in life. Yeah. It's bizarre. Have you seen anything like this?
No, never. But I really hope that it's a testament to the power of community. When you get enough people behind you for a good cause, whether it's in the sense of the finance space right now and what's going on, whether it's right or wrong, they're doing it for a good purpose. They're showing the power of what actually getting people together can do. You can overthrow the top dogs. You can overthrow the institutions. I hope this trickles down into other aspects like government, for example. Like, I hope we can get a group of people together who have, kind of the middle ground views of things where they're really in it for the advancement of everyone else, not just for one side's agenda over the other. They're just doing it for the hope of humanity. So I really hope that I have hope and aspirations that it does happen in other spaces to this as well.
I mean, I hope so too, but going back to our friend Jack Dorsey, like,
but that's even a tricky thing because, he has this essentially autonomy within the Twitter universe because that's what it is. It is a universe at the end of the day. But then on the same side of the coin, he's creating Project Blue Sky, which is a decentralized social network. So he's essentially building the thing that's going to take down Twitter.
Okay, I should know about this. I don't know about this.
So not a lot of public information is out about it, so I only know a limited amount as well. But It's basically he funded a team of 8 to 10 engineers, and they're solely trying to build a decentralized social network. And
which means no one could control what happens on there. Whatever goes, goes.
Exactly. So it's like, how much hate can you throw at the guy because he is doing that? But then, like, you can also ask the conspiracy side of things is, what's his ulterior motives behind that?
Who's making him do shit?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know if you knew what I was going to say, but you probably did. And that just makes the case 10 times stronger. He is a walking, breathing, total confusion of an individual. I don't know how you say it. I'm missing the word right now. But the same guy who wants to go ban people and take away people's platforms. Well, that's another thing. There's a lot of things I keep wanting to ask you about. We're not getting to all of them. This happens every goddamn podcast, talking to you people, that just smart guys, like we introduce so many things. But he's coming in and he's banning all these things and going against freedoms. And he's the same guy who has been maybe not day one, but the closest thing to day one Bitcoiner, right? Which is the whole concept of taking away power from institutions.
Yep.
And he's funding something like this, which would mean that, like, technically that at that point, the KKK could go on there and, like, incite violence, and hypothetically you can do nothing about it, which sounds crazy, but that's what you're looking at with decentralized social media. Do you know how it works, though?
No, but it's also a question of, you see the thing with Apple and Parler. Apple came out and explicitly said that they removed Parler because there is no form of, like, censorship in a way, where if they just made a little bit of edits to their guidelines and added some sort of censorship policies where you can't say whatever the fuck you want to say, then they can get back on the App Store. So it's like...
Do you know that wasn't true?
Oh, no.
And we need to check this. So everything I'm saying right now, we'll stick it in the show notes. I'll verify this after. But I think Tulsi actually talked about this.
Okay.
On that. I might be wrong about that. Hopefully I'm right about that. But they had a process where they had a board, maybe it was like 100 people, who determine whether or not it crosses the line of free speech or, like, planning shit.
Parler does.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
But it's people. It's not an automated algorithm, which, by the way, is the same thing Twitter was doing with these accounts.
Right.
They had to do it through people.
Yeah.
And so there's a 24-hour turnaround on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't necessarily get to everything right away. So they did have a plan in place. And what's the difference between that and, like, their argument, because they're a right-wing platform, as it turned out. Like, they don't say they are, but they are. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
Then looking at Twitter and saying, well, Antifa's organized on your platform before, and they never got banned.
Right.
So if that is true, that's another thing where it's like, well, even Apple, how do you even defend that? I don't know.
That gets down a slippery slope too, because you just said it. There's 100 people. Bias is inherent, whether you want to ignore it or not. Everyone has some sort of bias regarding something.
I'm cool with that too.
Yeah, me too.
It's human.
That's what makes you human, exactly. But then how do you leave it up to people and then go and trash them for something? Because it's like, well, at the end of the day, someone's had some sort of bias, and it's impossible to remove a bias. So what are you going to do?
There's almost no good answer for it.
Yeah.
You try to... Well...
If you got an answer, we're building the next social network.
We're doing it right now in the bunker right here. We're doing it. Maybe we could start with the question then. And the question is, what constitutes the public square? I love this topic. It's been talked about before on here, and everyone always has, like, very good ideas and different answers. So my friend Horo, who was in here, talked about this in something that aged extremely well in October, where we were talking about Bret Weinstein being banned from Facebook, that whole snafu, which at the time he was still banned. It hadn't been fixed yet. Like, we did it, like, that day.
Oh, shit.
And I said, can they do this? And he said, they absolutely can. They're legally allowed to do this. They did absolutely nothing wrong. They can take him off for any reason they want. And he said, if you come into my restaurant and if I own a restaurant and you come in, you're in the restaurant business.
Yep.
Your family's in that.
Yep.
So, if you want someone to get the fuck out, they got to get the fuck out.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point. You look back at the situation with the bakery, right? And the gay guy, they kicked him out, but like at the end of the day, he technically can do that. Whether it was right or wrong, he can do that.
Fucked up, but slippery slope.
Exactly.
If you say they can't do that, then what can they do?
Right.
You know? So, and again, provided you're not, that one was based on religious freedom, right? Which, regardless of what our opinion of that is, there's like a stipulation with that.
Yeah.
However, today, and I could be wrong about this, my legal friends might yell at me, but if somebody who was a different ethnicity walked into your restaurant and you said, if you're dumb enough to say like, oh, I'm racist against your type, get out. Then it's different.
Yeah.
They can be like, nah, that ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
And then you get charged with something and shut down, as you should.
Right.
But provided that none of that's the case, if you walk into the restaurant and you want someone to get out of your restaurant, if they walk into your restaurant, you can do that. So with social media, you can do that. And the Section 230 thing, by the way, like, I don't want to go down that whole thing, but when people are yelling that, they don't actually know what that means, because it would essentially mean that social media would have to police everything. And so the same reasons we hate it for people just being so extreme and going at each other are the reasons we love, to an extent, it, because people can express opinions and ideas.
Yeah,
The very dumbed down way of putting it is that if you opened up the Section 230 and declared these platforms as publishers responsible for stuff, no one would be able to put any kind of opinion on social media, and they would die.
No.
So I'm not even going to go there. But since they are protected by that and they can legally kick people off, it now comes, and we talked about, you brought this up too, it comes back to the, well, who do you want to have control of it? Like, do you want the government to come in and fix it? Because that means that the only alternative is to have them legislated against doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then they are controlled by a body that maybe you don't trust, like it would be the government. There's no one else.
Yep.
So the second level to it is that regardless of how you solve it, we define these platforms as the public squares.
Yep.
The founders wrote out, in the public square expressing an idea, free speech. And my example I give is that if I'm hosting a rally for whatever in Union Square in New York City, right? Not during Corona, when there's actually like all kinds of people around.
Yeah.
Let's say there's 3,000 people in my rally. There's all the office buildings, the Starbucks. It's a big happening area. Let's say over this 3-hour rally, 100,000 people total, whether they're in Starbucks, the office building up there, passing by, witness my rally, where they hear at least 2 lines of it to know what it was about and have that ingrained in their head. Like, oh, they are talking about this.
Yep.
Oh, let me think about that, right? If anyone's taking a video or posting about it and social media decides to censor all of it, the only people who find out about it are those 100,000, and then it's up to good old-fashioned word of mouth when they're with somebody to hopefully tell them and, spread it, which doesn't work at the level of social media.
Right.
If the next day a same-size rally happened with the same number of people going by, but they don't censor all of it, like social media doesn't censor any of the videos or posts, that rally can meet billions of people around the world right in their newsfeed.
Yep.
So it is the public square, but you can't, it's this conundrum, because if you then decide that and legislate it as such, you then have to admit that the government's coming in to fix it. And now does the government decide what free speech is?
Yeah, a bunch of people, like we mentioned in the hearing, don't know shit about technology. So how can you rely on them to make educated decisions on the future? Because that's, regardless of what's going on right now, you have to think about the future, because technology, we're in a technologically driven world. It's going to own the future whether we want it to or not. So you need to create legislation around that inhibits it, but also creates a certain restriction to an extent. But then that's the question. What is that restriction? Who's making that rule?
I don't know the answer.
No.
At all. I think this is one I sit up with at night a lot. Ever since we had that conversation and he put it that black and white for me, I was like, oh, shit. Okay, now I know how to think about it, but then that didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So it's like another damned if you do, damned if you don't. But what I do know the answer, part of the answer, the easiest part, is that you just kind of let everything go. And if Steve Bannon wants to come out and like openly call for people to be murdered, okay, well that's an easy one.
Right.
You can defend that in court very easily.
Right.
No problem. Take it down.
Right.
Get him off. But if people aren't doing that, like, did you read why they banned Trump?
The
statement?
actual case, no.
I want to pull this up.
Yeah, do it.
So that we
Jamie,
read it.
pull that up for us.
We read. There's no. I am Jamie out here, unfortunately. But I want to do that so that I read this so that people know that we're not fucking it up.
Yep.
All right, give me 1 sec. Twitter safety. Was it Twitter safety or Twitter support?
I'm not entirely sure.
Twitter support. Nope, Twitter safety. Okay, I got it. So this concerned me when I saw this. Now I gotta get the TV back on Google over here. I'm a mess. See, I needed Jamie. we're working on it. But this is what concerned me because the whole question, the thing around Trump was he held that fucking idiot rally in D.C. where, nothing's gonna go wrong, right? And, D.C. mayor loves you. They're gonna make sure everything's completely locked down for you. I mean, he walked right into it, so he's got nothing but himself to blame. That said, the argument was over his words that he spoke at the rally, which then, of course, appeared on social media. And there's, in a court of law, I don't think you could convict him because he was vague enough. But at the very least, it was, to say nothing of the rally, it was completely irresponsible.
Yeah.
Saying what he did. And then it was a clusterfuck, and everyone was pretty horrified with what they saw.
Absolutely.
That's not why Twitter kicked him off.
No.
They suspended him for 12 hours for that. And I think...
I remember that.
Yeah, I remember talking to someone about that night. And I'm like, it's a dangerous precedent.
Definitely.
But, like, it's 12 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, which that did not age well.
No.
But they went through this. I'm not going to read the entire thing. It's right up there behind us. Twitter broke down, after his 12-hour thing came up, they broke down the 2 tweets that he tweeted after that and used this as grounds to ban him. Okay? So tweet 1 was January 8th, the day that they banned him. In the morning, he tweeted, "The 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form." The second tweet said, "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. Now, sentence 1 right there, the 75 million great American patriots who voted for me. I am not the grammar police guy. I forget what the fuck a direct object is and all that. I know I love writing, but I do it from here, right?
Yeah.
Can we agree that he is clearly referring to the 75 million great people who voted for him as patriots there?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Here's what Twitter said on that. The use of the words American patriots to describe some of his supporters is also being interpreted as support for those committing violent acts at the U.S. Capitol. First of all, he didn't even use that to describe some of his supporters. He used it to describe all of them.
Yeah.
75 million people who voted for him, approximately.
Right.
They then took that 75 million to assume that those people are... The assumption they're making right here is that those people are all capable of being a redneck jerk-off going into the Capitol to do that thing.
Yeah.
And they should throw all those people in jail.
Absolutely.
Every single one of them. But that's the level they took it to.
Yeah,
so think of anyone in your life who you respect who voted for Trump. We all know people who did.
Definitely.
That's what they're saying they are.
Yeah, that's absurd.
Okay?
We got to send them back to grammar school.
Here's the next one. The mention of his supporters having a, quote, giant voice long into the future, and that, quote, they will not be disrespected or treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. Which, can you and I agree that is just him rallying the base and saying, hey, you know what, I hear you, and we're going to make sure you're listened to.
Definitely.
Okay. Is being interpreted as further indication that President Trump does not plan to facilitate an orderly transition, and instead that he plans to continue to support, empower, and shield those who believe he won the election. The election thing's a whole nother thing, and I think it got to the point where it's like it was just so bad for the country, regardless of whatever the hell he thought.
They're just putting a lot of words in this guy's mouth.
Right? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
They're basically saying... we can read his mind.
Yeah, right.
We know what he meant.
Right.
I don't need to go through the rest of this. I will put this link in the show notes so people can see it. But if you cannot see the danger in a platform making the decision on the leader of the free world on the basis of what they think he meant and deciding that they at Twitter, who fucking hates him and he hates them,
Yep.
they know exactly what his mind thinks.
Yeah.
And then they know that, like, they take things to such extremes. I mean, look, this guy said more irresponsible, you know, if you want to judge it as racist shit, than any president in recent memory. Still the same guy who pardoned Kodak Black and Lil Wayne.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are these weird, like, truths where you have to be like, well, maybe he's just half an old fart. He just has no fucking regard for anything.
Which, I mean, is a very viable option here, because you got to think about, like, I said this to my buddies at one time, like, we're sitting here in a situation where we have to elect. So the average mortality rate in the United States is like 78 years old, I believe, last time I checked. We're in a situation where we have to choose between two guys who, within their 4 terms, based on that statistic, will die.
Geriatric fucks.
When I go to a party with my family, you know, the grandpop is usually in the corner farting himself and I'm making fun of him. But yet that's who we're electing the president.
That's what I'm saying, man. You can think all these things at the same time. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
You can think all these things.
It's amazing. It's just, I can't believe that's a situation we put ourselves in.
And I'm not defending anything he said. Like,
No,
and when people come up to me and they're like, here is all the evidence and here's why he's the biggest racist in the world. Shit, man. You got a great case.
One on him.
You got a great case.
Yeah.
Because if he's dumb enough to keep saying that stuff over and over again when people say, you know, you can't really say that, then even if you don't think that stuff, and I don't know for sure because I'm not in his fucking mind, you take that credit publicly. And that's a separate issue from this, by the way. Because, by the way, that's still fucked up as it is. It's protected speech.
Yes.
Right? So this is the slippery slope in true form.
Yep.
And no one that I could find on Twitter was talking about, including all the people who were livid at this, including far right-wing people who were livid at the downstream effects of this. No one looked at the words and broke down the words that they were saying, and that is terrifying to me.
Well, you also brought up Section 230 in the journalism aspect. That seems like something a journalist would do.
What do you mean?
Take a bunch of quotes and spin it however they want to spin it.
A commentator.
Commentator.
Who's every journalist now.
Correct.
But the traditional journalists shouldn't.
Correct. Right.
But you're right.
Yeah.
Because that's what a journalist is.
Yep.
They're just masquerading as...
It's a weird thing. But also, I wanted to ask you, what's your opinion on that? You brought up the Kodak Black and Lil Wayne pardoning. He did all that, which, cool. I don't care either way, honestly. Why aren't you pardoning Eric Snowden? The guy's a true American hero.
Don't get me started.
In the very definition of what that means, that's him.
There are 2 possibilities on Trump outgoing here, regardless of, you know, what his whole presidency was.
Right.
Again, he was the outsider, right?
Yeah.
We can agree probably hated the deep state.
Yeah.
All that. We can agree that whether or not you agreed with how he was going to handle it or how he talked, there were things about him where he identified stuff that had nothing to do necessarily with, like, your political ideology. It had everything to do with bullshit happening behind people's backs. Okay. The fact that he left office with a pardon list and outside, and Kodak Black, you make the argument that he really deserved that. I don't know. Maybe that's just Trump throwing a pop culture one out there. Lil Wayne, I think, perfectly deserved it.
Yeah, sure.
But besides, like, those one-offs, and there were a few more, someone was telling me about a few, he pardoned a lot of cronies.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people who committed fraud, stole from people, were backhanded, backroom political animals. He left Snowden out there, didn't pardon him. He left Assange out there, didn't pardon him. And he didn't commute Ross Ulbricht, which is a separate issue that I talked about for a long time on a couple podcasts ago. So my thought is that there's 2 possibilities. Donald Trump is either the biggest pussy of all time and all talk, which is absolutely a possibility.
Yep.
All talk, no action, full of shit.
Right.
The other possibility is the blackmail that interested parties got on him and people around him is beyond the pale. Because he walked out of there tail between his legs like a bitch.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Yeah, it is a fact. It's a good point.
And you obviously thought Snowden should have been pardoned, as I did.
Absolutely. The guy is literally an American hero. He exposed everything that is a major issue today.
Okay, I like this because it sounds like you're very well versed on that case.
I don't know very well, but I know a little bit.
Okay, we're going to call that very well because most people know fucking nothing.
Okay.
With him, and I fully supported the pardon,
Yeah.
was asking for it for a long time.
Yeah.
Really admire the story and what he did once I read up through all of it. And, you know, like Glenn Greenwald, for my money, is one of the best reporters in the world.
Yeah.
He's somebody who genuinely wants to get at the truth on stuff.
Yeah.
And also is like, you know, he's married to a socialist. Like, openly talks about it, right? Yeah. So there is so much trustworthy shit there. The argument with Snowden is that it's another slippery slope thing. Because he did this thing, who's to say that the next guy for some totally different thing says, well, Snowden did it, so I can, and it's like a little less important, right?
Okay.
And this is the reason I fully support the pardon of Snowden, no questions asked. Where I come in and say, you have to ignore it, is the fact that Snowden, number one, had everything to lose.
Oh, yeah.
Everything to lose.
This was not a kid.
This was not
family.
This is not a mad soldier, dude.
No.
He had a great job, great job. Lived in Hawaii.
Yeah. Everything was going his way.
Had been around the world. He had been a CIA agent, had done everything. He had it made.
Yep.
He couldn't even tell his family he was doing this. He
Yep.
lost everything.
Yep.
Number two, he exposed something that groupthink and the government would never let be exposed.
Never.
And he exposed something that none of us gave a shit about, apparently.
Yeah, seriously.
And now we're complaining about it. He's been trying to tell us for fucking 8 years. He uncovered one of the greatest constitutional violations in the history of this country. And so, thank you for doing it.
Absolutely.
And I will take... People are going to say, well, there you go. You're taking the argument on a slippery slope. You have to on some things.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when the guy literally, like we said, put his life on the line. Everything. He's in hiding in another country, away from his family. I'm pretty sure his wife was pregnant at the time when he had to flee.
Couldn't tell her.
Couldn't tell.
I said that. But if you're not going to do it, then when are you going to do it?
Yeah, exactly. No one else is.
The privacy violations, and now you're seeing them take advantage of it again. Like we talk about it with all the big tech companies.
Yep.
Okay, fair. If I'm a big tech company, the one thing I am saying, not that we shouldn't address that, I'm saying, what the fuck about the government?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. How do you just let that go? But everyone wants to put the focus on big tech. Now, again, I'm not advocating for them because, one, I am in tech, so I understand their perspective, but then I also understand the average consumer perspective that there does need to be some sort because you can't let the censorship go to the extremes that it is. But how do you just ignore what the government did?
We did.
Did. Probably still do.
Yeah, I'm saying we did ignore it.
Yeah, oh yeah, we did ignore it. And we still do too.
And he also, not that he couldn't guarantee it. If the government wants to make that argument, they can make that argument. He could not guarantee it, but he worked for months and months and months to very carefully redact information that could put American lives in danger, and 0 people died as a result of his leaks.
0.
0. That's a fact.
And he basically just put it out there through, I forget who he used as a source to release this information. But even after that, he just let it go. He just said, I need to get this out there and let the people know that this is what's happening. If they want to take it and do something about it, then sure. If they want to let it go, then whatever. But I had to do this because I believed it was such a breach of privacy.
I had a conversation with my friend Ty Martin about this, as he didn't know much about the case at all. And he was just asking me to go through it. And on the slippery slope side, I looked at some of the people who were most against what he did. And some of the people who are most adamantly against, outside of the corrupt deep staters, I'm just like going full tinfoil out with that. It's such a fun thing to say.
Yeah, it is.
Outside of the corrupt government bureaucrats who just wanted to protect their own ass. Some of the people who had the most visceral reaction were military guys.
Yep.
And I get it. Because the military is based on the chain of command.
Right.
And to be fair, if we didn't have the chain of command with the military, we wouldn't have a military.
Right.
And so, especially guys who maybe went through West Point or Rangers and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true.
That is the most sacred thing in their life. It doesn't make it 100% right, which is what they're there for, arguing. Also doesn't make them bad people for arguing that. But I really want the opinion of some of these guys where the case is put in front of them and they don't just immediately go to, he broke the chain of command.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're also dealing with a computer programmer who, to an extent, these guys are free thinkers in a way. So they're not going to be as strict in that aspect of following the chain of command and all that stuff, because they do have some sort of freedom in their head that they would need to pursue. And in his situation, it was for the freedom of the people.
And even if that weren't applicable, which I think it is,
yeah,
it's still a question of, well, what was right here and what was wrong here.
That's also true. Like, honestly, if it's me, fuck the chain of command. Like, this is millions and millions and millions of people who could just be trying to have a conversation with their grandma. I'm not saying shit at all, but like, why do you got to listen to that?
I heard someone make the argument, I don't remember who, but I was talking about the case with somebody, this is a few months ago, who was saying there were ways he could have gotten it out without doing this, where they were saying he didn't make efforts to go through the chain of command, which is not true.
Yeah.
He did talk, and now, did he go 6 levels on it? No. Why didn't he go 6 levels on it? He didn't go 6 levels on it for the whole problem of it, which is not only does shit get told to be swept under the rug, we'll take it from here, son, but suddenly he doesn't have a job anymore.
Yep.
He gets threatened.
Yep.
Because and what are they doing it in the name of? They're doing it in the name of for the good of country and national security.
Yeah. Yeah. Which also, if you're doing it for the good of the country, what should you do in that situation? I'm probably letting it go. I'm leaking it. Because it's in the best interest of the people to know that it's not. I mean, especially in today's age, like, we keep blaming big tech. It's a common theme. It's not just big tech.
It's not.
It's not just big tech. But
we got to remind that.
Yeah.
We do get, because there's a lot of great things that came out of big tech.
Absolutely.
Fuck if I appreciate the utility I get. I've said it about Amazon on this show.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, all of them.
Yep.
You know, even the downsides and negatives, you see the social dilemma and all that. All the things they created are only possible because they did.
Yes.
Right? So I do really appreciate that. And you can't we just want to point and blame in society and say one person. That's why you saw a lot of people run a campaign on voting for Trump of like, ooh, orange man bad. Because that's all people knew how to say. They didn't know why or what. Yep. And they're not wrong about that. No. And then they were able to meme that, right? And get people to vote for him. Yep. You will get, when you point a finger and you're only going to point it in one place, you're going to get the other side to use that to their advantage in some way.
Definitely. That's how Trump blew up in the beginning. He was literally on every media platform. Every media platform. They were trashing him, but at the end of the day, negative publicity is still publicity.
And never admitting that you were wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is sick.
Yes.
But that's, you know, when guys are just unapologetic about stuff, there's something in our society that just eventually a lot of us let it go.
Yep.
Which I think is a sad commentary.
Yep. To the whole political aspect point, though, I keep bringing up Clubhouse just because it's such a hot topic right now.
It is.
As long as it continues the path that it's going down, I believe Clubhouse has the power to change the political landscape. Because, for example, the other night, I was in a room with Edward Weinstein and Tulsi Gabbard.
I was in that room.
What other medium are you in a situation like that?
Tim Dillon?
Where you have some of the brightest minds with I don't know if she still is considered a politician, but who was in the space for a long time. Imagine the impact it could have it takes balls to be a politician and hop on there, but that could really open doors to transparency in the process. And just like Bernie Sanders, for example. Did I agree with everything the guy said? No. Do I agree with some things? Yes. Did he mean well behind majority of the things he said? Yes. He just had a bad time explaining it and people took it the wrong way. So,
because it's 30-second hits.
Exactly.
Mr. Sanders, you have we're going to end the education system.
And that's where they left it.
Wall Street's taking your money.
Yeah.
And so it's like, all right, did I hit the next? My mittens are going to be a meme?
Yes.
You know, it's not like, okay, Bernie, how are you going to do that?
Yes, exactly. No one took the time to even listen to that. But then I'm not sure if you saw him on the Rogan show, but, you know, a lot of the points that he was bringing up that people called extremely radical, crazy, stupid, he had a good basis and a good plan to implement those things. That's where I think a platform like Clubhouse can come in, and you can have Joe Rogan type personalities who are very good at asking questions and stuff like that actually ask these guys questions and have them explain it to a room of 2,000, 3,000, who knows, in a couple months, 1 million people in a room. You know,
and you have to answer.
And you have to answer.
It's your voice.
Yeah, you can't sit there on mute because that's awkward silence and everyone's leaving and then no one's supporting you.
And it's not a statement.
And it's not. You have to actually provide your point of view and a plan because no one's going to let you go unless you have a plan. We saw it with, I'm not sure if you were in any of the rooms with the whole San Francisco situation. There was...
I was just you're taking the words out of my mouth. Keep going.
The
one with the 3 mayors?
No, the defense guy.
Oh, you're talking about something different.
Shit. It might be all intertwined because San Francisco is such a mess. They're all involved.
Yeah. There's a lot of San Francisco rooms in there.
I forget the guy's name. I can't believe I'm drawing a blank right now. But he basically, there was a bunch of high-level VCs and entrepreneurs in the room just talking about the future of San Francisco, how they're going to, change things for the better, how we're going to change politics in the city because that's the only way to advance it. And the guy ended up hopping in the Clubhouse room unannounced. No one invited him, nothing. And he just got ripped apart. But he also did not have any good defense. He got put on blast because he didn't have a list of talking points. He didn't have any of this. People were just firing questions that they had, and he had to defend himself on spot in real time. And he botched it. And then it all took to Twitter, and then everyone basically recall this guy. And now he's on his way out.
When you see someone put out a tweet, put out a statement link on a tweet or on Instagram, put out a video, it's nice, maybe it's a straight form of them talking, but you don't know how many takes it took, what planning went into it. You don't see any of that. You see the final product.
Yes.
On Clubhouse, it's live.
It's live.
It's right there. And your voice is behind it, and you can either answer the question or you can't. Get the fuck out if you can't. And there was another one. There's been a lot of San Francisco rooms, and I don't think I was in that one, but I've been in some awkward ones where people, Weinstein just comes in and be like, what the fuck are you doing?
I love it.
Like, yeah, I think you guys are done. All these people are like, no, don't say that. But there was a room with, Gayle King was in there, Van Jones, a lady who I'm actually not familiar with, and she was running the room, but she's like big. She's got a huge following. She's some sort of reporter. I'll go look up who she was. And she was running the whole thing, and they had a lot of speakers up there. Mark Andreessen was a speaker, but most speakers were on mute.
Yeah.
And a couple of the people were kind of asking most of the questions. But the 3 featured speakers of this room were the mayor of San Francisco, the mayor of Austin, Texas, and the GOAT, Mayor Suarez of Miami.
Oh, shit.
Who, by the way, Austin's getting a lot of people because they're within Texas and they got to follow those laws like it's nice, open, whatever. San Francisco's going to Miami right now.
Oh, 100%.
And Suarez is on fire.
He's killing it.
On fire.
He's absolutely killing it. Just in how he's even hopping on, Casey Adams, the big podcaster. Yeah. He even hopped on his show.
Dude, he's everywhere.
He's literally everywhere, and he is tapping into the tech community to take that.
And you know how he did it?
No.
The first tweet.
Oh, okay.
How can I help?
Yes.
Delian. Keith Rabos and Delian are the 2 guys. I call Keith Rabos Rabois left and right.
Yeah,
Can't get it right.
Honestly.
And Delian, I don't know. It's like Weinstein. I've really got to learn to not fuck this up. But he tweets, Founders Fund guy, tweets out like, hear me out, guys.
Yeah.
December 4th. This is recently. This is like 2 months ago. Tweets out, hear me out, guys. What if we move Silicon Valley to Miami? And Mayor Suarez, Twitter king, comes in, subtweets it, and goes, how can I help? And it wasn't just some bullshit politician tweet, because then he backed it the fuck up.
Yep.
He said, come out here, just tell me what. I am not the smartest guy in the room. Tell me what you need from me. I'll get it done.
Yep.
He doesn't even put the guy. I think he is a Republican, right?
Yeah.
Right? You never hear about that.
No.
So he's in this Clubhouse room. And the Austin guy was kind of irrelevant. People are going to Austin. They were already there too. He just was sitting there clearly chilling, probably not even listening to what's happening. Yeah. It's San Francisco and Miami because that's where the move is right now.
Yep.
And so you got London Breed on there. What was she doing? She was coming out like a typical politician, deflecting blame, saying why she had to do everything she did, saving lives. We did so well. We beat New York with this. Our people are not leaving. She even said people don't want to leave San Francisco because they'll get married here. People are good looking here, which like... Okay.
You're comparing that to Miami?
Yeah, it's like, read the room, hun. Read the fucking room. So they
Has she been on the beach?
Dude. And she'd been talking earlier. She's like, I was out there with Mayor Suarez last year when my Niners were in the Super Bowl. We were partying it up and having a good time. And you can't see Suarez, but you know he's like, that could be a campaign finance violation. Why are we saying that out loud? But you're hearing this. So the lady who's running the room is clearly friends with London Breed. Yeah. Doesn't have any. She was very nice to Suarez, but clearly close with London Breed. Yeah. So they had invited in all these entrepreneurs, like I mentioned, Andreessen, who's a VC guy, he's still out there, right? Yep. All these guys who had moved to Miami, though, of all different demographics too. And like they're bringing them up to the stage, and these guys are just sitting on mute, like, letting this happen. And then they'd like leave the stage, and then she'd be like, "Oh, where'd so and so go? We got to bring you back." And so you just see London Breed goes first. Sorry, made an ass out of herself from a politician perspective. Yeah. Then Suarez gets up and he's like nervous a little bit, just like, "Listen, I have to do what's best for the city because that's my job, and if I can get talent to come here to build, to show us how to build, because I don't know how to build, I'm going to ask them to come." Like, that's what he was saying. And it's like, oh my God, this guy's a politician?
Yeah,
you're
right.
hearing this?
Right.
And so everyone in the room, the lady who was running the room is like, damn, I'm getting texts from people in this room saying you need to run for president. and so then they start calling back these entrepreneurs who left. And they're like, oh, come back. So they bring them in and they're like, so when are you coming back? And these guys, the answers were always the same. They'd be like, well, you know, I mean, see, like the thing, like Silicon Valley, man, is Silicon Valley, right? But like, you know, yeah, I'm not coming back. Yeah. Like everyone's just like, and silence. Suarez staying on mute. Yeah. London Breed going on and off mute, not saying anything, doesn't know what to say. And the answer is, all you got to do is be somebody that just recognizes I'm a fucking politician. I don't know what I don't know. Yep. If I want to build a good community, I have to ask people how things are done. Yeah. That's all it is. It's not hard.
Top leaders in the space who have been doing this for a long time.
It's not hard.
And without them, Silicon Valley isn't shit.
Nope. And your whole point with this, a Clubhouse, like you can't hide. That's why you're right.
You can't hide.
Did you? Well, you weren't in that room, but I went and looked at Twitter after that.
That's a beautiful thing too. Once the room's over, it carries over.
See the reaction, baby.
It carries over. And then you get the people in the audience who weren't speaking to just blast their thoughts. And then it's just a trickle, like snowball effect. It just keeps blowing.
But at the same time, if those people did hypothetically come up to speak, yeah, they better be able to speak.
Well, yeah, that's a good point too.
You know,
it's not, you don't have infinite amount of time to craft a tweet.
Exactly. And the tone of your tweet.
Yeah.
You know how many people type in uppercase and don't even speak in lowercase?
That's true too.
A lot.
A lot.
That's a clip. that was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
But that's the truth. And then there's a lot of people who speak in lowercase, and maybe tone wise they speak in lowercase, but when they speak, everyone's fucking shutting up and listening.
Yeah, facts.
You know? And on Clubhouse, you see that. You see people rising to the top, getting attention because they are putting themselves out there.
Yep. I just really hope it continues down this path because, you know, it could be a tool that really enables change because it's like, it seems that empathy is almost at the forefront of their platform. There, you never see, I mean, there's always outside cases, right, where you're going to have a room that people are freaking out and arguing about. But like in this situation, so far from what I've seen, it's not enough to even cause a ruckus on the platform. And they are genuine. They do have people's best interests in mind. But then on the flip side of that is, how do you capture Gen Z? Because Gen Z is not on the platform, and Gen Z ultimately is what is going to make the platform continue on.
Well, as we stand right now, I know, Fen, you said they crossed 1 million users like a week ago. And
yeah, they're at like 3 now, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's like 50% growth week over week.
Yeah.
Not month over month, week over week.
So we're going to start to see that naturally coming in. It is interesting that they started this platform not appealing to the youngest demographic. That's
very interesting.
Every platform starts.
Yep.
Every single one. Look through history. It started with the 14 to 16-year-olds. That's how you win. You know, I was on TikTok in March 2019, and I was begging some talented people I know who were like 20 years old. I'm like, get the fuck on there. And they're like, that's for kids. And I'm like, you don't understand. You don't get it.
Yep.
Like, it's all 14-year-olds lip singing in a camera right now. Half of them are going to be famous, but like, get the fuck on there. And they didn't, and they missed their shot, you know? And with Clubhouse, you said like there's older demographics in there, but there's some clear demographics who are crushing it.
Oh, definitely.
Right? So I see that and you were saying, I think the older demographics, an example would be like within the VC community. You see a lot of 40, 50-year-olds because that's where a lot of successful VCs are.
Right.
The VC community is crushing it on there.
Definitely. Big time.
The Aussies are crushing it on there.
Oh, okay.
The Aussies in the morning are lit, man.
Oh, actually, that's true. But I've seen a lot of from like in the VC rooms, a lot of them in there.
Probably. Yeah.
And even guys in the UK, a lot of UK people are on there.
I believe it. Well, maybe I'm hearing some Aussies who are actually UK, and that's just me being the ugly American. But there's some who are definitely like surfing on a beach in Sydney while they're talking. But are there beaches in Sydney?
I don't know, but I
say some things sometimes. I don't know.
That's cool. Yeah, there has to be some beautiful
There's
beaches
got to be
in
something
Australia.
there. It's on the coast. Either way, they're surfing. Yeah. They're loving it. Yeah. So they're killing it. The black community's crushing it.
They are.
I think they're crushing Clubhouse more than anyone else.
Definitely.
There is such a diversity of different directions that they're taking their rooms. Some of the rooms I come into, I'm like, God damn, like you can go to one that's like simple where they're talking about like this musician versus that musician. It's like a really fun conversation. Yeah. And then you get one on like the state of race relations in America, which are always interesting. You know,
then the next room's a rap battle between two rappers.
And then the next room's a personal finance room. It's like, God damn, they're using it. Like they're killing it. So that's good to see. And then the one that I could do without is the LinkedIn Mafia is killing it on there. Yeah, talking about effort, putting in the drive, sales tactics. Yeah. Shout out Jake Dunlap. I see you. But like, there's some good there, but there's some that's like, okay, but it can be won. So when Gen Z gets on there, they're going to get their silos and they're going to be like, oh shit, and then they're going to want that personal touch too, because they do crave that. Yeah.
But I feel like it doesn't have enough tricks for them. Like what's TikTok? Because it's super interesting. You can do so much shit. You can't. It's like it's a filter at the end of the day, right? You can be someone who you're really not, but on Clubhouse you can't be. And I feel like that's what's appealing to Gen Z, even on Instagram, right? You can edit photos left and right, fucking give yourself a facelift, whatever you want.
You're right. I don't know what percentage you're right, but you're right. There is another big percentage in there, though. It could be 30, could be 60.
Yeah.
I did research for a podcast early on in this podcast where I talked about this because a big portion of it is exactly what you just said, where Gen Z is the next bootloader of the millennials, and they only know a world that's superficial, which is not their fault, and it's sad.
No, it's not, but yeah.
There's another big movement within Gen Z, though, which is like, take a fucking picture of yourself, like, chilling on your porch, no filter. The Hooji Cam thing. That's a Gen Z thing. That started with them.
Now, is there a certain group that is associated with that? Because I know what you're talking about, and I've seen it from, there's a group on Clubhouse, Gen Z VCs. It's a lot of tech people who are exposing that side of like, hey, listen, I'm fucking busting my ass. I don't have time to edit these pictures. This is what I look like right behind the desk right now. So is there a certain demographic associated with that you're saying?
I got to look at that more.
Yeah.
I was looking at it through information that was filtered to me and obviously sourced that I could go check, which is check out this influencer, that one. And they were different ones. Travel, beauty, regular just lifestyle. Like even like some superficial stuff, but they're all about like the one line. It was a Taylor Lorenz article was one main one. Okay. I had sourced it through like 5 articles. She had some great lines in hers though. She's a great reporter where the closer was a quote from someone saying the days of taking a picture of avocado toast are over for a lot of these kids. They're not like the millennials in that way. Or the millennial demographic, which I'm on the very back end of, we're all superficial. Yeah. It's like maybe that's starting to shift, but it's been that way. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So Gen Z does have a movement like that. But yeah, there's another part of Gen Z that is just the next level up of millennials. You're 100% right about that. So there are some kids who are going to be too scared of their own shadow to show something real to get on there.
And it's interesting because they are also... I don't want to generalize here, but a certain portion of that community is also the ones on Twitter who don't care about the censorship side of things, right? So they just use it for their own purposes. And then on the flip side of that, Twitter has Twitter Spaces. Will that ultimately kill Clubhouse at the end of the day because Twitter has direct access to Gen Z already? And they don't show any signs of getting off the platform because they don't care about these political issues.
I don't know. It's a great question. I have no idea.
Which I hope it doesn't.
I could see it going both ways.
Yeah. I need Clubhouse and Twitter to be separate.
Yeah. I mean, Clubhouse is, it's because it's adopted people differently, though. Like, I can't see Mark Andreessen going on and using Twitter Spaces now where he uses Clubhouse.
Right.
I can't see some of these guys. People have built big followings through Clubhouse. I can't see them suddenly be like, oh, I'll go to Twitter Spaces.
Yeah.
It's similar to people didn't go to Instagram Reels.
That's true.
You know, TikTok had a lot of too young stuff where people who were 20 years old and older were like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so then Instagram creates Reels, tries to do the same thing in a place where they're already addicted, and
people are just repurposing their TikToks.
Exactly, and it's only gone so far.
Yep.
You know, TikTok's stronger than ever. So I don't know, but it's a valid question because we see how fast this stuff shifts.
Yeah, and I mean, kudos to the guys at Clubhouse because they did a killer job in just executing above all things, because it's very hard in the startup space to spit shit out as fast as they did, and even continually to adjust their features, add features, fix bugs, all that stuff.
It's amazing.
It really is amazing. And the most amazing thing about it is their path to monetization. They're already, in the letter they put out in their recent fundraising raise, they're already working with creators to establish a monetization factor in it. Unbelievable. I don't think I've seen
ideas too.
Yes, very good ideas, because they're not ads. And ads kill platforms, in my opinion.
They're more in the Patreon.
Yes, almost VIP exclusivity side of things.
More personal too.
Yep. The people can directly support people they want to support, not just a big company.
Yeah. Well, there's time's going to tell with this, like everything else, and it's still like the first inning, believe it or not, of
crazy.
what they're doing.
Yep.
But their valuation's now at like $2 billion, and we're basically 10 months
still in private beta.
Still private beta.
It's
but
absurd.
The personal aspect of it is amazing. And on that other point too, where you talk about the people who don't care about free speech and whatever. Like, we said this earlier, but when it comes for them, they will, and it'll be too late.
Yeah.
That's scary to me, though. I just watched this documentary that just came out. You ever seen the documentary Icarus? About the Russian... It's been viewed like 800 million times or something on Netflix, but it was 2017, won the Oscar. It uncovered the whole Russian doping scandal by accident. And that became the documentary was supposed to be this guy he was a big cycling fan. So he wanted to do this. It was not a professional race, but one where big time amateur race internationally where people get drug tested. And so he wanted to record himself training to do every steroid known to man, document it, pass all the drug tests, and then reveal the whole thing and be like, I just cheated on camera for 2 years and, won this race and you guys didn't catch me. This system is broken, right? Brilliant idea.
Definitely.
But he ends up getting connected with this anti-doping tester out in Russia, talking to the guy on Zoom, right? Or on Google Hangout.
Yeah.
And the guy's teaching him like from the opposite end. Like he is supposed to train like how to catch people doping. So he's teaching this guy how to dope to get around it, which is the same access that like Lance Armstrong had.
Right.
So this guy's documenting all this, and the dude who was teaching him was this funny stereotypical Russian guy, like a bad stereotype, brilliant guy, but he was almost like Borat. He's like, "Hello, then," and then one day he gets on there, Bryan was the director's name. Bryan, my life is in danger. I need asylum. Can you get me out? They are coming to kill my family. And like the guy's like, what the fuck? They end up uncovering the whole Russian doping scandal because this guy who's the anti-doper was on the instruction of the government doping every single athlete except the figure skaters. Apparently that didn't help. But all of them dope in all of them and did this documentary. So it was amazing. Wins the Oscar. People got to watch that if you haven't. Makes his next documentary called The Dissident, which now just came out. It's been done for a year, though.
I gotta check these out.
It's on Jamal Khashoggi.
Okay.
The Saudi reporter who walked into the consulate in Istanbul and was murdered by the Saudi regime.
Yep.
You have to rent this for $20 or buy it for $24 or $25 because none of the platforms, including Netflix, would put it on because they are financially incentivized through Saudi. Including, by the way, Jeff Bezos, whose phone was later hacked and revealed by the Saudi government because of this whole thing, because he cut ties talking with them after the Khashoggi thing, because Khashoggi worked for the Washington Post and worked for him. And he won't put it on his platform without the paywall. So I actually give Reed Hastings credit, the CEO of Netflix, because he was honest.
Right.
He said, our job is not to speak truth to power. Our job is to create great content. I appreciate someone who actually comes out and tells the truth. I don't have to agree with it, but kudos to him.
Yeah.
Because he didn't sit there and say, well, it's a business decision.
Yeah.
There's a lot of aspects. No corporate speak. He said, look, we have a lot of business in Saudi Arabia, whatever. But this documentary is unbelievable because the whole concept was Jamal Khashoggi was murdered by Mohammed bin Salman on his orders by 15 of his men who flew in. It's all on record. Flew in on private jets that he sent to murder this guy and chop up his body in the consulate. And it's all on tape. All on tape, and nothing's come of it. And it's disgusting. But some of the same people who are adamantly talking about this documentary, which is inherently a documentary promoting free speech. They go into everything that the Saudi government does to push down free speech, are some of the same people celebrating the deplatforming of free speech in America. And it's scary to me because it's full circle, and they don't fucking see it. Yeah. And I love the documentary, by the way. It's incredible. Everyone should watch it.
Yeah, definitely got to see that.
But you should watch it from the lens of watch it without a political view. Watch it as if you don't care about politics at all, which it really has nothing to do with that. But that concept of the free speech, then think about it without politics and say, regardless of whether I am left or right, if I really disagree with what someone's saying...
Or center. I got to throw center. Or
center, of course. Wherever I am. Do I want this? Because that's the next step.
Fuck, man.
And he got protected, too. He got protected by Trump because Kushner's number one thing is Israel. I think Israel's great. Like, I'm strongly pro-Israel. God damn. But not at the...
No, that also brings up the UFC guy who was involved in a protest in his home country. I forget the country now. But he was murdered because he was protesting.
Iranian wrestler.
Yes. He wasn't in UFC?
He was a wrestler. He's a great professional wrestler. It wasn't UFC.
Fuck. Why did I think the UFC?
Because Dana White tried to save his life.
That's why.
Yeah, man.
That's scary.
The Ayatollah of Iran is tweeting right now. About death to Israel, by the way.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so this full circle thing.
God. Who draws the line and where is it drawn?
And the same person you're arguing for there, you can body bag from that film because Trump is on record fucking denying this thing. Jesus. Like, well, he told me he didn't do it, which is like almost funny to listen to him actually say that on camera. But I mean, it is funny, but it's not funny.
No, right.
Like, they have it on tape. I think the one thing the Turkish government said is, I assume they said this, you can't play the tape. We don't want people to hear it.
Yeah.
Here's the script.
Yeah.
So the guy heard the tape and he had the full script, and they did it beautifully. They read it like a movie script in bits and pieces, and it's like the bone saw turns on and the arm comes off. And they say, are we putting it in? No, this bag goes separate to Saudi.
Yeah.
It's stone cold proof. They murdered a reporter.
God, I don't get how you can just disregard that kind of stuff. Just because, like you said, it's a testament of, like, is that what we want? And then, even if it's not, how do you avoid it?
I'm not saying, like, we're run by a crown prince or anything. Who, by the way, like, blackmailed his whole family to get that, office. But what are you okay with and what are you not?
Yeah. Where's your moral boundaries at?
Yeah. Like, give me a politician who went, like, let's say that dual thing happened, right? That Weinstein wanted to do.
Yeah.
Where he had a left and right, but instead of that, it was nasty. It was like Steve King and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So you got, like, pretty racist dude, and AOC, right? I would rather see that happen and know that free speech was protected in the process for it to happen, for it to be able to win out in the long term, than try to say, well, let's avoid that at all costs and put ourselves down the slippery slope of knocking down free speech, whatever context it might be in that place.
Right.
And I shouldn't be crazy for saying that.
No. But it's valid. And it's just, yeah. It's a tough question, man. It really is. And that's when I try to figure out, you know, because I really would love to have an impact in that. And it's in the sense of like social media perspective, like the whole free speech and everything like that, building a new one. But it's just like to anyone in that space who is building and you think you have the right idea, continue to build. And I really do hope everything goes well for you, because it is a fucking tough space and it is hairy as hell.
Yeah. Yep. And great. And despite all the negativity, we're just trying to perfect things that are already great too.
Yes.
You know, it's not like we're like, it's all broken. You work in it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Right. And I talked to some guys who are probably closed-minded. I still love those people. Right.
Yep.
Like they're amazing thinkers. With innovation, I hope they would think differently and like actually like question some things. But you know, like that's their life. You know, just don't legislate it on everyone else.
Yes.
I change my mind every 5 minutes. If you don't believe me, go listen to my old podcast from 2 months ago. Yeah. I'll say something on a podcast and a week later, I'll call up the guy I was on with and I'll be like, man, that aged real bad. Like, I don't care.
No.
Like you stand behind it. And so if you know you can be wrong about stuff, then you know that you have to allow the platform for you to be wrong.
Yes, exactly. You can't be attached to your opinions at the end of the day.
All right, man. Well, listen, we got to get dinner. It's been a long day. This was great.
This was
I know
awesome.
we're gonna do this again.
I would love to.
All right, cool. And we're hitting Clubhouse a little bit too, which has been great.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get all over that. I've been much more active lately, hopping in rooms, trying to speak as much as I can. So I'm down.
I can tell you're using it as a great tool though, because you're always online, and I know you're working a lot, but you'll just be on there sitting in a room, which is great because maybe you don't listen for an hour and then you turn the volume on, and then you get 10 minutes on a break, and you're like, oh wow, that was really cool. I heard that pitch.
Yep.
It's great, man.
Dude, it really is. Kudos to them again. Can't suggest it enough to people, just from a networking perspective and just honestly career advancement too. Just, it's amazing.
Yeah, well, the career advancement's a great point, but I'll cut it there. Giovanni, thanks for coming in, bro.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Everybody else, give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace.